How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? I am Vincent Acker, the host of the Monster Truck Outlaws of the West podcast. Today is a very special episode as we have the Hall of Famer Seth Doulton coming on the podcast. But before we bring Seth on, we do have a special guest for today. It's going to be Levi Shones. Levi, you know the West Coast very well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Vincent. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good myself. Very excited for tonight's episode, gotta say. But I mean, you might know this other guy pretty well as well. It's going to be Phil Vichinanza with Philosophy.
Hi, everybody.
He's back once again.
They can't get rid of me.
I guess so. Well, Levi, I'll let you do the honors of introducing our first guest, or our only guest.
Well, our first guest is a legend throughout the state of California. Give it up for the legendary man behind Golden State Promotions, Seth Doulton.
Seth, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Good, great. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Well, Seth, I see you're sitting in a very decorated office. Why don't you tell us about some of the prized possessions you have in your background?
Well, I don't know. I just put up a couple of posters. I've got the Rocket, which is one of my favorite trucks, and the Skull Bandit 2 T-shirt on, and those trucks were pretty much built identical at the same time. They had very similar motors and very similar frames, and the suspension was very similar to the two. And then I've got some of those, one of the original AM/PM Boss toy trucks that sold at AM/PM. That's kind of a rare find. Those were from the 80s, and then I've got a couple of the green light greenies behind me too. But I just, what's really amazing to me at this time is that I wanted to take a shout out to all the fans. I couldn't believe that people even today or 10 years ago would remember our trucks and what we did. It's kind of I don't know, humbling, I guess, to say. I started selling on eBay probably in 2004, and I just came across some stuff in the garage, and I just threw a couple of magazines and some posters. I had about 5,000 posters left, and I threw some on there, and all of a sudden they started going. People wanted them, and people were messaging me and stuff, and it's amazing because Jim Reese, who is really the mastermind behind the trucks. Without him, there wouldn't have been any trucks. But he and I've talked many times about it, that we were just kind of building trucks for sponsors, and we tried to build them the best we could and look as nice because they were on display a lot of the times. And to hear fans say, Tom Montgomery and different people, Levi, say, boy, I remember when those trucks pulled in Anaheim Stadium, they really looked top dog, and we never really looked at it that way. We just came and kind of run what we brung, and all the drivers were really good drivers. They took good care of the equipment, and they knew that they had to go do displays on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So their orders were not to tear stuff up, so they still ran pretty hard, but we always tried to keep them together because the displays were where we were making the money.
Very good. So we'll get right into it with the very basic question. How did you get involved in the motorsport industry?
Well, I've always been into marketing and sponsorship stuff. I started with the rodeo company. I was a rodeo clown and bullfighter, and you know, the rodeo clown and bullfighter is the person that everybody wants to talk to after the rodeo, you know, and, you know, you get into marketing and promotions and stuff. So, and I got into sponsor sales with the rodeo. And so I actually met Walt Garrison when I was rodeoing, and he was a steer wrestler at the time. And he was working for US Tobacco Company. So he came, I was fighting bulls at a rodeo in Santa Barbara in about, I'd say 82 or 83. And it was August, and he invited me to come down to the motocross event at the Rose Bowl. And he says, come on down, come into the suite and stuff. And so I said, okay. So I went down there, and, you know, Walt says, hey, what are you doing nowadays and everything? I said, well, I started this pickup parts business, Golden State Pickup Parts, and, you know, sell parts, and I'm restoring a few old vehicles. He goes, we're going to launch this brand new product called Skull Bandits. And they're a little pouch you put in there, and it's like a tea bag of tobacco. He says, could you build a vehicle with Skull Bandit on the side of it? And I said, well, sure. You know, I said, in fact, I'm doing a panel truck right now that's in primer. We can call it the Skull Bandit panel. He goes, done deal. How much? I can't remember whatever I told him. He says, hey, that's easy. I will send you a check next week. So I painted the Skull Bandit panel truck, which I actually sent Vincent a picture of it. There it is. And it was kind of cool, a tilt front end. I put a Buick motor in it because I was cheaper. You could buy a Buick front end clip for a lot cheaper than a Chevelle or Camaro. So we put a Buick front end clip on it, and it really ran nice. It rode real nice. And Vinnie Bergman at Color Me Custom painted it for us. We lettered it all up. We took it on tour, and Vicky Bergman, Vinnie's wife, went with us. She was one of the Skull girls. And it was really a great opportunity. We took it to all the ISCA car shows, and Earl Campbell came and sampled there. He was signing autographs in the booth, got to meet him, super guy. And so then after we'd run that for, like, I'm going to say 82 or 83 around, and we had a turntable that went on, Walt came to me and says, hey, we need to do something bigger and better. Yeah, this is great, you know. And back in those days, you just handed out tobacco. I mean, the girls would have a bag of tobacco. They just hand it to anybody, you know, didn't matter the age or whatever. It was pretty free ball. And then, you know, so I said, well, and we were walking, I remember like it was yesterday, and this will answer quite a few questions. We were walking around this car show in Anaheim, and by the way, I hope I don't make any enemies in here, but I'm just going to call things like I saw them in the day. But Jimmy and I were walking around with Walt, and Jim Hudson was there. He was a sponsor guy for US Tobacco. Great outfit, too. They really treated us good. And King Kong was there, that old brown Ford. And, new Ford at the time. The body style was kind of new. But it had like an air compressor with two hoses hooked up to it, running to two different tires running the whole time because it had holes in the tires. They'd patch the tires, you know. And so I said, well, we could build one of those. We could build a monster truck. I'd never even seen a monster truck crush cars or anything. I mean, I guess I heard about them. And and Jimmy looked at me like, what are you talking about? You know, I said, yeah, we could build one of those. But I said, I want to build it different. The ones I see are all like regular late model Chevys. Barefoot was running an S10 then, I think, you know, a 86 S10 or whatever. And, you know, there was another Ford truck, a blue truck. Can't remember the name of that one. But anyway, so he goes, okay, what's that going to cost? I looked at Jimmy and I said, well, I don't know. You know, and Jimmy and I kind of huddled on it, and I shot him a price. He goes, yeah, we can do that. That sounds like a good deal. When can you have it ready? I go, well, I don't know. This is like November. So we walked seriously into the next aisleway, and there was a guy there that was taking old Jag motors, V12 Jag motors out of Jags and putting, you know, small block Chevys in them. So I walked up to him and I said, hey, we're building a monster truck for US Tobacco Company, and I want to put a Jaguar motor in because I'm a marketing guy. I want to be unique. I want to be different. I don't want to just turn out another truck that looks like another truck, you know. I said, we're building a 58 Cameo because that's the rarest Chevy truck, you know. And it's going to, we want to put a Jaguar motor. He says, I'm in, whatever you need. I'll give you a high horsepower Jaguar motor, V12. So we left that place with all the plans in it. So the first Bandit was built in Jimmy's driveway. His wife used to cook, his wife at the time, Judy, great gal, used to cook us grilled cheese sandwiches. we'd be out there. I wasn't doing much work. I was running for welding rod or whatever, but we stick welded that thing in his driveway. And then there was a place called High Reach we took it to for the hydraulics and stuff. And I think they got some pictures of the very first picture taken. And actually, that's the very first picture ever taken of the Bandit right there. That was out in front of High Reach. And we were cleaning it all up because we hauled it over. Chuck Love with Love's Towing in Santa Barbara actually helped us haul it for a while. We hauled it over to a convenience store convention they were having at the LA Convention Center. We took it over there just like that. And I mean, everybody crawled all over it and they loved it. And, we got all kinds of pats on the back. We were well going there. And that was January. And then I think the first place we crushed with it was, I think, you don't quote me on this, but there's a picture of the first crush. It was at Long Beach Sealand Arena. And I'm pretty sure it was in February or March. So that's how it all got started.
So, wow, kind of amazing hearing the story of the original Skull Bandit right there. Just after that, what kind of started it? Did the Skull Bandit 2 come right away, or was it the AM/PM trucks next, etc.? What was the next truck after the Skull Bandit?
Well, interesting, some more about the original Skull Bandit was that when we went to SRO Pace at the time that was running all the stadium shows, we wanted to go there, obviously, to get U.S. Tobacco Company some sponsorship. So the first place we ran was at the Superdome in New Orleans that year, and we had a meeting with Bob George and C.E. Altman, who was kind of his arena manager, I guess, and ticket guy, and kind of the grounds guy. He loved the truck and he was all hot for it. Well, this Bob George, we have a meeting with him. Meredith and I had a meeting with him, and he says, well, you're going to have to pay us to run the truck. I go, what do you mean? Well, we're not just going to let a sponsored truck come in to our shows. You got to pay us. And I said, well, we're not going to pay you, goodbye, and C.E. Altman fought him and said, hey, this is bringing the sport to another level. If we have a Skull Bandit truck in there, who knows what's next? Maybe a Red Man, maybe a Coors Silver Bullet, other companies will come on board. And so anyway, we made a deal, and we usually always ran for probably a little bit less than some of the other trucks did, because we always put together displays. And that was, like I said earlier, the displays were where we really made the money. We used to get, $1,500 a display from the sponsors, and we do 2 a day with the truck. So like the AM/PM trucks, we'd take them to one AM/PM in the morning and another AM/PM at night, and then move them to another AM/PM. So they were really making some good money when we were doing displays. And U.S. Tobacco took us to a lot of the sportsman shows and Indy 500. The drivers got to go and sit in the suite at the Indy 500 and Long Beach Grand Prix. A lot of those places we went to. But the next truck to come along is that Skull figured out into the first year they wanted a second truck. They wanted a truck to work on the East Coast. They wanted a truck to stay back there all year long on the East Coast. So that's when I hired Gary Sarton, and Gary ran the Bandit on the East Coast. And then we bought the Cardiff Giant truck from Brian Cardiff and ran it as a Skull Crusher till we made the Copenhagen Skull Crusher, the 66 truck, 66 Chevy truck. So that was really the second truck. The second truck we owned out of the 15 that I owned from start to finish was actually the Cardiff Giant. And we, immediately put Skull Crusher on it and ran it for a little bit till we had as a Skull Crusher, as a second truck till we had the Crusher done. And there was a lot of, Skull really got involved in that one for the colors and all the graphics and stuff on there. So it took us about, I can't remember, it seemed like a month or so to get them to sign off on. Larry Erickson did all the artwork on all the trucks, and it took him about 5 or 6 tries till they got what they wanted. But and speaking of artwork, a lot of people ask me why the color change, or why we did the paint change from the original design of the Skull Bandit to the 3 colors. And I really like that original design a lot better than the 3 colors. But the 3 colors were when introduced the different flavors of tobacco. They did I think a mint, the Skoal flavor, and then a peppermint, and then another brown color one. I can't remember what the reddish colored one was, but so they wanted the truck to match that kind of, so that's why we changed the paint scheme on that. But the boss came along, Meredith, who I was married to at the time. We were together through all the monster truck years. She was on the she was a vice president of marketing for an LA radio station that carried the Raiders, and she was on the Raiders golf tournament with Tom Flores and Lod Cook, who was the CEO of AM/PM. So they get talking at this board meeting about what she was doing and what her husband does and blah, blah, blah. And she goes, oh, my husband, and we put on these monster truck shows and we have monster trucks. And he goes, well, I want a monster truck. He goes, and she goes, okay, well, we can build you a monster truck. He says, the only catch is you have to drive it. So she called me on the phone. She goes, hey, I'm here at this meeting with Lod Cook, and he wants to know if I can drive a monster truck. Because she had been driving. She showed him pictures of her driving. She started driving. I think there's some pictures of her driving. You could always tell her driving the Bandit, because when it's doing a wheelie she's leaning forward. So she's kind of driving, leaning forward on the steering wheel. There's one of her there. I think it's in Santa Barbara where she was driving. And so I said, yeah, we'll build you a special truck. So the boss was actually built for her to drive. Jimmy drove it a little bit to get the bugs out of it. But it had a seat that was specially for her rear end. And the length of her arms to the wheels, and the rear steering switch that Jimmy improvised on the door. I think if it wasn't the first self-centering switch, it was one of the first self-centering switches on a monster truck. And so he really made it for her, put the pedals up. She's only 5'2", weighs about 103. So that's how she did the boss, and she drove that for quite a while. But I was going to mention, while talking about women driving, if you saw that one part in the preview tape of the Bandit, it was taken at Santa Barbara, where it did a real sharp wheelie and jumped across the cars, kind of like walked on its back legs. Well, that was the funniest thing one of the funniest things that ever happened at a monster truck show. So Meredith had been driving and I was had this idea about having a women's monster truck class. And we ended up having it. Cindy Rosser drove, Sandy Kinney drove. A lot of people drove the different trucks. Cindy drove the hot stuff Jeep of Jeff Boehner. But so there was a girl there that raced sand drags. It was a friend of a friend. She goes, oh, I could drive a monster truck. So Gary gets in her in the Bandit, and she does that wheelie across there. And I guess I didn't see Gary's face, but he got out of that truck and almost threw up. He was so scared. He goes, because he was riding with her. In those days, you could have two people in the trucks. I think we were barely into helmets at that time. Definitely weren't into shoulder harnesses at that time. We're talking probably 85, but that was a pretty funny deal. But when I saw that film, that shot of that car walking across, or the monster truck walking across those cars, reminded me of that. Mike Galloway loved it. He was loving it. But once I had a couple of trucks, when I had the Crusher and the Skull Crusher and the Bandit, I used to do rodeos at the state fairs. And the California State Fair got a hold of me and said, hey, we want you to do a monster truck show. And I says, well, you really can't do a monster truck show. They just kind of crush cars. I said, they're like the high point of a truck pull or a tractor pull, or, at a fair, they'll crush a couple of cars away to the crowd. But I said, you can't make a 45-minute or an hour show. And we started talking to him. And then I started talking to Meredith and talking to some of my rodeo buddies. I figured out, well, yeah, we can have a rear wheelie contest, a beauty contest. And then I think Steve Helm never liked the pyramid, but Mike Galloway or somebody came up with this pyramid where we stack cars up on top of each other to do the pyramid. And so, we ended up putting a 45-minute to an hour show, because that's really all the fairs want. They want people to get back out on the midway. And the first year we did it, there was 85. And to my knowledge, it was the first ever all monster truck show. And we called it Monster Truck Madness. And, We sold out on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, which they never sell out in that arena on those nights. You know, they usually, sometimes they're even dark because they can't draw crowds. And from there, by the Fairs convention, that was in August. By the Fairs convention the next year in January, we had booked about 12 or 15 fairs because they all heard about how great the show was. Not patting myself on the back, but it went over pretty good. And then we got up to doing 45 shows a year. At the end, we did Michigan State Fair, Ohio, Minnesota, Anoka, all over the place. But that was a nice fill in, and we used a lot of good trucks there. And the fair shows really were good because we would tear down, like we did Inglewood. We did the Forum in Inglewood. We used to partner with the rodeo, with Flying E Rodeo Company. They'd have a performance of rodeo. We'd have a performance of monster trucks, you know, because they'd rent the building and back and forth. Well, I remember we left in the middle of the night, left Inglewood, California, drove all night long for the next day to have a show in Twin Falls, Idaho, at Filer, Idaho at the fair. It was a lot of fun, you know, a lot of fun. We had a lot of good memories. My kids were there. We had these little gasoline-powered go-kart things, the Messy Monster and the Pocket Rocket. And Travis and Alexis, I'm really proud that they got to hang around and learned a lot and had a lot of fun at the shows with those little trucks. And it was a good experience for them.
Well, we have some questions in the comments right now. We have a question from Frank Ramirez III. He says, Skull Bandit 2 is my favorite out of your fleet. Who designed the frame and how did they come about?
Well, all the trucks were designed by Jimmy Reese. And, you know, he's kind of a very special person. He's got a business now, Classic Performance Products. And he's just got a mind. He's an engineer, and it's in his mind. He's self-taught. He knows about balances and ratios and horsepower and all that kind of stuff. And so he built every truck that we had, and you know, fixed up some of the ones that we bought. But so he, you know, it was kind of by learning other stuff. Obviously, we moved away from the 5-ton axles to the planetaries, and George Striegel at Clay Smith Engineering happened to be like 2 doors down from our shop in Buena Park, and he built all the motors for us. And man, I'll tell you what, they were bulletproof. And I don't know, Jimmy could probably correct me on this. I think he's listening, but we lost one motor in the 10 years we were running monster trucks. It seems like we ran monster trucks for 40 years, but we did it for about 10 years. And we lost one motor in Detroit. It wasn't warm enough, and it fired. And the block was too cold, and it grenaded something, floated this or that or the other thing. But that was the only. And we have had another motor flown in, and everything was fine for the next show. But out of all the running at all the shows, you know, we went through a lot of drop boxes, a lot of transmissions, but those motors were like bulletproof, and those were 580s. In the Rocket, in the band, and the Rocket and the Skull Bandit 2 had 580s in them. And we went to the SCS drop boxes then, and they hooked up pretty good. But you know, like Levi was saying, his favorite truck is the Eliminator. I mean, that truck hooked up. That truck, when we took it to Ascot, that's where we used to always test our trucks a little bit. And that truck would do a wheel stand from just grabbing the dirt. I mean, that truck just had power to the tire, man. That was a really nice truck. And if you noticed on it, a lot of people don't notice this, but the front end was stretched out about 9.5, 10 inches because Jimmy had a special frame length that he wanted to do on it. He had it figured out for the drive shaft angle and all that stuff. And for the wheelbase, that was a real special thing. So that's why we stretched it out. And it really worked, other than the first time at Anaheim, we figured out that we had the wheels, the offset a little bit wrong. And the very first time it ran in front of a crowd, it rolled there, but we got that straightened out. He ran it in primer. He wanted to run it there. It just had a smashed windshield stuff. They wouldn't let him run it, but the truck was fine. It just, we put it in primer, ran it for the first half of the season in primer, but it just, probably the tires were maybe a little bit overinflated and the wheel offset was a little bit wrong, but that you learn those things. We rolled 2 trucks, that truck and then Gary Sarton. rolled one over front ways, the Skull Bandit 2 at he was really upset about that, and he was really apologetic. It wasn't his fault, but they were doing the drag race, and he got on the brakes too soon at the runoff, and it just kind of rolled over real soft. Hurt the hood a little bit. I don't even think it broke the windshield. I can't remember exactly, but he was mad at himself about it. Gary was. We had about, I'd say, 8 really good drivers. Hope I don't miss any, but Steve Helm and Gary Sarton and Dewey Middlecamp and Robert Parker drove for us. I got him from Don Maples, and he turned out he had never driven before he got to us. Most of these guys had never driven. Dale Boucher, Steve Helm, they were 4x4 guys kind of, but they'd never driven a monster truck. And I think that was one of our keys to successes, is that we kind of got guys that were responsible and knew how to, throttle power kind of, but they weren't like, oh, hey, I'm going to go out and win this race and stuff like that. Warren Davis was the same way. They're kind of, a lot of them came from the rodeo business, cowboys, they know how to drive truck. And that was a big deal. We had a lot of people that wanted to go drive monster trucks for us, but you had to have a clean CDL. You had to be a good truck driver. You had to get to the displays. You had to tire up a truck 2 or 3 times a day. You had to keep the tires clean, keep the trucks clean. There was less racing than there was primping, and living in motel rooms. And, it wasn't an easy job. So, like I said, the real campaigners were Steve Helm and Gary Sarton, Robert Parker, Dale Boucher. They were there day in and day out. And they really helped build the trucks too. They were there when Jimmy was building the trucks, a lot of them. Steve Helm was right there when they built the 66 Scroll Crusher. He knew where every bolt was, and Gary knew where every bolt was in the Skull Bandit too. So, they didn't have crew chiefs. They were, a lot of these trucks were running around. I think Fred Schaefer, I'm not sure, I don't even think he had a tire jockey, but a lot of them would have 2 guys running with them. Their, crew chief and their tire jockey. Well, my drivers were doing it all, and I think that really helped because it built a lot of pride in what they were hauling up and down the road. But
so you've had a lot of solid guys that have been part of your team, but there's always been one constant. You've mentioned it many times already. It's Jim Reese. He's went in the Hall of Fame with you. How important was Jim to your team, and where did you find Jim?
Well, Jim is like my father, my son, my brother, my mother, my daughter, my wife. He's just the best thing that ever happened to me. I met him when I was rodeoing, and his dad owned a business called SoCal Pickups, Southern California Pickups and Panels. They sold Ford pickup parts. So his dad and I got to be fast friends. His dad went to some rodeos and stuff, and Jimmy was probably 15 or 16 when I met him. So Jim, his dad, Jack Reese, his dad, told me, you need to quit rodeo and you're going to kill yourself. You need to start a pickup parts business because you like Chevys. I'm in the Ford business. I'll help you get in the Chevy business and teach you everything I know about how to do the mail order business. So I thought about it for a while, and when I was rodeoing, I was picking up parts. When I'd go to these different rodeos, I'd go work the wrecking yards and stuff and pick up parts and selling them just around town. So I finally retired from rodeo and started selling pickup parts. So Jack really helped me out, and I got to know Jimmy really well. I'd go down to SoCal. They were making parts for me, and we were sharing parts and stuff. And so Jack ended up selling the business. So I asked Jimmy, I said, well, do you want to go? I want to hire you. I want you to go to work for me, and I was only had the store in Santa Barbara then. And, he goes, well, I got to stay down here, my kids, and, there's one child at the time. And, but yeah, let me think about it. Well, about the same time, this R.K. Smith, who's also a really close friend of mine that did a lot of photography work for me in my catalogs and shot a lot of the monster truck stuff too. He and I were at a barbecue, and he says, hey, why don't you open up a store in LA? Because people come from LA every weekend to buy parts in your Santa Barbara store. And I go, who will run it? And he goes, my wife, Kathy, will run it. And Kathy looks at him and says, oh, I will. So anyway, we opened up a shop in LA. Vinnie Bergman, actually the guy that painted the Skull Bandit panel and the Skull Bandit monster truck, he gave me part of his shop. We boarded it all in, made a store in there, and Kathy ran that store. And then Jimmy came to work for me then, and we very soon after that moved over to Buena Park, where we built all the monster trucks. And he just, he started his CPP, Classic Performance Products, which is now a huge business. He's got about 70, 80 employees. He's been impacted by this whole COVID thing, of course. But, they ship 500 packages a day, and it's just an amazing 70,000 square foot warehouse. He's steering, brakes, and suspension. Well, he started that business in the back of the Buena Park store, building the monster trucks, building parts for me, transmission mounts, power steering kits for me at Golden State. And then he branched out and just got too busy with it, and started, getting huge, and then went on his own. But he was the guy that, it was all him. He worked day and night, probably cost him his first marriage, but he would work when one of the trucks were broke down, or he was building a truck. Seriously, that we had a good support crew back at the shop too. There was about 5 guys, Alan Krause, and some of those guys that really worked day and night building these trucks, getting all the hydraulics done on them and hoses made, and running around LA. We had one guy, all he did was chase parts, go to Henry's Tough Axles and get stuff picked up, and Heim joints. And when we got out of the monster truck business, there were so many Heim joints and stuff left that it probably cost us $50 a piece when we bought them, and they were just boxes of them when we got out of the monster truck business. But it was really his love for building and figuring stuff out, and engineering and building the frames. We never used, a lot of people just used a stock frame and slapped it on top of a couple of C-channel frame bars and then called it good. He always went from the ground up. Everything was, from the ground up, and all the K-rails and this is the cross members and all that stuff was all scratch built. And like I said, every truck that you see, all 15 of those trucks that we had or ran at one time, if you think about that truck building it, Jim probably had 1,000 hours in each one of those trucks. No kidding. Just like probably 2 to 3 months of, 18-hour days, definitely.
That is such an interesting story here. We have some fan questions here and a little fan message from you from a legend, Charlie Pauken. He says, thanks for the flashback, Seth. What a great experience I had running Excalibur with you guys. And our fan question comes from Tim Welty, who asked if you built any linked trucks per se, as in like 4-link trucks or the more modern trucks, I would assume.
Well, there's a couple of things. One is I shout out to Excalibur. We used some really good trucks at some of the shows, especially when we ran like a Michigan State Fair. And we also put that show on it. It was the largest gathering of monster trucks at the time. I think it was in 87, 88, at St. Joseph Fairgrounds in South Bend, Indiana. I think we ended up getting about 37 to 40 monster trucks in one place. We did that for 4-wheel and off-road. But we ran, Jeff Boehner ran with us a lot. And, and Kurt Dabney came out with a Durliner Giant one whole season, and we just really got Fred Schaefer ran a lot. Fred, in my book, Fred is like the #1 guy out there as far as integrity. Always ran hard. I love the smell of his trucks, the alcohol of his trucks. All I need is a box of popcorn when I smell that alcohol burning. And they were always real crispy. They pull into arena and just crispy. And that one of the things I'll talk about now, get it out of the way, is the one year we ran one of Freddie's trucks, and how we came up with that was that we used to always stop at Fred's shop there in Granite, in Illinois, and work on them. We always had an open shop there. If we needed a floor jack to take it for a month, or we needed something, or a tire, needed an axle, I don't think we ever paid for anything. Fred just said, hey, if I got it, it's yours. And my drivers would stay with him and cuddle with the bears and stuff. Todd Blazer spent a lot of time there, and Todd he was a quad racer and turned out to be an excellent driver too. But I said, hey, I want you to run all year with you. And he goes, well, I got this other truck. He goes, I'll just give you the truck for a year and just give it back to me when you're done with it, and just just pay me wherever you run it. Just write me a check when you run it, which was a really great deal for both of us, really. And he knew Jimmy would take care of the truck, and that was a lot of fun having that truck. Warren Davis had a lot of fun with that truck. That truck was a little bit spooky. That truck definitely had some horsepower, but anyway, that was good. But as far as there was a kind of a perfect storm when we got out of the monster truck. People always ask me, why do we get out of it? And I said, well, about 4 or 5 things happened at once that got us out of the monster truck business. And I could see it all coming. It's kind of like how I got out of the mail order business first time. I saw some stuff coming, you know. Well, first of all, the trucks were all running to that fiberglass body, center seat, you know, cantilever, whatever they are, 20 shock trucks. And I could tell that wasn't really suitable for what our main focus was, sponsorship. See, we never built a truck and then went out and looked for a sponsor. We were kind of the reverse of what everybody else did. I had a sponsor. They wanted me to build a truck, so we built them a truck. So I would never build a truck before I had a sponsor. So theoretically, that was going to be tough because they wanted us to take it. Like there's a picture of the truck at Goodyear when we first took. Goodyear was a big sponsor of ours. In fact, they gave us all our fleet tires, my dad's tires, any tires we needed were free. And we had tires for all the trucks, and they wanted a truck. And we ended up rebadging the Hawaiian Punch truck as a Goodyear Flying Eagle. But I could see that wasn't going to work because they like the trucks to go to AMPM, they like the trucks to go to, the fairs and haul around the fair, manager at the parade at the rodeo, or they wanted to get up in it and take pictures in it. And all this stuff was kind of going away. And, and then the other thing that was happening is SRO Pace, I think at that time was bought by Madison Square Gardens, and they were getting really flaky. They'd try to book you a bunch of places, and then the money would change, and then they'd cancel on you. And, there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. The other thing is Golden State Pickup Parts. When we started the monster truck business in 84 or 85, we had like 10 full-time employees. I don't know how many packages we were doing, maybe 40 or 50 a day or whatever we were doing, 60 a day. I don't know what we were doing, but, it was kind of it was a business that was running itself, and I had time, Jimmy had time, there wasn't all that going on. Well, fast forward to 10 years, the pickup parts business had grown to 40 employees, and we were shipping, 300-400 packages a day, a lot of catalogs, 10 people answering the phones. It started needing a lot more of my interest and a lot more of my time, which was not a bad deal. I loved it. But then the third thing really was one of the major things. It was really getting tough to get drivers. We had, Gary had retired. Steve Helm had retired. Dale, I'm pretty sure, was still around, doing a great job. Todd might have been around too, but we couldn't fill some of the driver holes. So we tried to, as much as we tried to. There was one time I had to fly somewhere and get a truck and bring it home. And Jimmy had to do it more than 2 or 3 times, where either a guy got drunk in a hotel room, or, the truck was left in the motel and the guy says, hey, I got to go home. My sister's sick. Just stuff like that. And then, or somebody just wasn't taking care of the trucks. They were dirty, and, we get a complaint from a sponsor. And I finally, we kind of decided, and U.S. Tobacco Company, we'd done it for them for 10 years or 8 years at that time, maybe 9 years. We'd pretty much been to all of the fairs that they wanted us to go to 1 or 2 times. AMPM was the same way. We'd pretty much gone to every AMPM. They're mostly the 7 Western states. There's a few in Idaho, I think. There might be a couple in Utah. Oregon's got a lot. Washington has a lot. California has a lot. Arizona has some. Nevada has some. But we'd pretty much been to all of those 2 or 3 times. And so it was just we just felt like it was kind of the time, and we wanted to, the trucks were still a little bit, I'm not going to say fresh, but they weren't like dinosaurs. So we thought, hey, maybe this is a good time to sell them off. And so we sold them. Of course, before we had sold the Bandit, the Crusher, the Skull Bandit panel truck and the Flying Eagle and Samson all to Japan. And that happened while we were still actively in the business, which allowed us to build some newer trucks and some better trucks. But I think there's a picture of the Skull Bandit and the Flying Eagle getting loaded on the airplane to go to Japan, that was a kind of a sad day, because that was the truck that started it all. And Gary Sarton's there in the background with I forgot the name of the kid. Jimmy could maybe put it in the chat, the kid that worked at the shop there. But Gary was sad to see it go. I think he was probably more upset about it than I was. He really liked that truck, and it had a lot of good fan following. But that was a happy day for the bank account, but it's kind of a sad day for the legend there. It's still alive over there. The last time I got a picture of it, well, first of all, somebody contacted me from Japan and said, hey, it's on eBay in Japan, which is some kind of Japanese eBay. They want $15,000 for it. Do you want to buy it? I'll help you get it shipped to California. And I got to thinking, well, even if I got it for $10,000, the shipping would be $10,000 or $8,000. And then it was so rusty. It was just everything you could see was rusty. So that told me that it just needed to, you might as well build a clone, because there was no way it was coming back. All the places where the fiberglass was mounted to metal had to be gone. And anyway, but somebody ended up buying it. And the last time somebody sent me a picture of it, it was in some kind of a restaurant in Japan. And they had primered it, but I really couldn't tell by the pictures. It was all in primer, gray primer. I couldn't tell by the pictures if it had been repaired. But I mean, it had rust where trucks never get rust, because it had been sitting out probably forever. But the crusher, the Skull Crusher over there, the last pictures I've seen, the guy that has it, I actually talked to him about seeing if he wanted to sell it. And it's still running, and he's run it a couple of times. It pretty much looks like when the day it was sold. I mean, we had taken the tobacco logos off it, but it's in pretty decent shape, and it's been inside the whole time in kind of a dusty barn. But some of the Feld people went to see it and sent me some pictures of it. But so that's kind of why we never went on to build those shop trucks and go with all that, tubing frames and stuff, because we just saw that why we got into the business was really for sponsors, and we just didn't see a really good avenue for them. And if you look at the monster trucks where they've come today, I'm really glad I'm not in it. I'm nothing against it, but it's kind of a carnival, and the back flipping and all that stuff. It's great, but they almost look like remote controlled trucks. They all look kind of the same, and fiberglass bodies. There are very few sponsors involved. I mean, there's a couple of major sponsors, but people have asked me, well, hey, why don't you, Jimmy bought that Eliminator back. He has the Eliminator now, and it's in excellent shape for the shape it's in. It need to be freshened up to run it, but you ought to do some old school monster truck shows, But I just don't think people would be satisfied. I think after seeing what they see on YouTube and, at the Monster Jam shows, I think you might be able to get them in 1 year to see get Jeff to bring his Jeep, and get, Terry to bring, his truck, and American Jeff Boehner to bring that American Hero truck and stuff like that, and bring a couple of the other clone trucks that have been built. But I think, it wouldn't last past a year. I just think people would think they're going to do more than they used to do, which what they used to do was really satisfying to people.
Well, we have a lot of fan questions, that's for sure. We have, let me see here, and a whole bunch of them. We got one from Donald Stetcher. He wants to know, where are your favorite places you've run your trucks at?
Well, there's a bunch of favorites. It's kind of like my favorite monster truck. It's one of the favorite places was Santa Barbara, Earl Warren Showgrounds, where there's quite a few pictures. That one of the Eliminator getting some good air, almost hitting the lights. And the reason that was one of my favorites is the crowd was right there. It had big concrete walls. You could almost, the drivers did high five the crowd when they drove by. They could get that close to the crowd, and it was very safe. And we started these SST trucks. I didn't send you any pictures of those. I should have sent you some pictures of those, but they were rear end drive Kawasaki Ninja motors. and they really were squirrely. And they were kind of like a stadium truck, mini stadium truck, and we used to race those instead of ATVs. They were a blast. We had more fun with those. And Jimmy drove one, I drove one, Dale drove one, Warren drove one. I don't think Steve drove one. But what was neat about Santa Barbara is we used to run in and outside the building like they do at the Coliseum. So we'd go out one door and then come back in and jump back into the arena through the other door, and it was a blast. They'd rooster tail all the way around the arena, throw mud up into the stands. People loved them. But of course, Mike Galloway, I think he's probably on here. He was. I got a story about him that he was. When I met Mike Galloway, that's what made Monster Truck Madness take off. I mean, we would have been a little farm show, like nothing against the little, county truck pull, but we were kind of little punk and rollers till I met Mike Galloway. And Mike Galloway, I met him, and the reason I brought him up is because I remember him announcing at Santa Barbara, he get the crowd. This guy, he used to say, "We'll sell you the whole seat, but you only need the edge." And I thought that was pretty cool. And he would get people. You could have a bad show. You could have some broke down trucks, or things could go wrong, or a truck could get hung up in cars. All those kind of things happen. And at the end of the show, people were cheering, and he could sell anything. Just the very best. That there's been a lot of good announcers. I'm not taking anything away from Army or any of the other guys, but he just had a way about him. That he and I had a banner. I was kind of the clown of the show. I had a clown truck that we used to break in half and stuff, and I did clown acts and clown around to keep the crowd going. And he and I had a way with each other. We kind of had a good conversation. But I'll tell you how I met Mike Galloway. So Meredith and I are at Anaheim, and this is really early on, and I hear this announcer. I didn't even know who Mike Galloway was, and I go, "Damn, that announcer's good." He's going, "Get him out of the truck, get him a Budweiser boss," and Gary Collins, Budweiser boss, and I said, "Man, that guy, we need that guy." So I went up to see Altman. He was a tall Texan guy, really good guy. Just a really, he's like everybody's father-in-law, just a really nice guy. And I said, "CE, who's that announcer?" He goes, "That's Mike Galloway." I go, "Well, I want to talk to him." And CE knew I was doing the shows. He goes, "Well, you can't afford him." And I go, "Well, I want to talk to him." He goes, "Well, yeah, he flies out of here right after the show or whatever. You can't get him." So Meredith and I went, we posted up I looked up where the announcer was. I saw this elevator coming straight down from the announcer stand. So Meredith and I went over there and posted up, waiting for him to come down. And here he comes down like with his little leather satchel. He has this little leather satchel that I didn't even know what he looked like because I was like, here's his voice, I said, "Hey, are you Mike Galloway?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I'm, Seth, and this is Meredith, and we're doing these shows out here in California, and I'd like to have you announce them." And he goes, "When are they?" And I go, "Well, we start in May and pretty much go full time till September. Every weekend, like we tear down at one show on a Wednesday night and be at another show Thursday and Friday, go to another fair Saturday, another show Sunday." In fact, Mike used to stay out here for 3 or 4 months during the, from May to September. So he goes, this was like January at the Anaheim show. He goes, "Yeah, I can do that." "Yeah." So what do you get? He goes, "Well, I don't know." I go, "What do you mean you don't know?" He goes, "Well, he says, figure it out. Let me see if the dates are clear and send me an airplane ticket. We'll just work through it." Well, Mike and I have been together, still one of my very best friends. He goes to truck shows or car shows with me now, truck shows, swap meets. We talk amongst every week, maybe sometimes daily. He always knows when I'm driving somewhere because I call him at 4:00 in the morning, California time. But we've never had a contract, never talked about what's it worth to you, whatever. Just always handed him a check afterwards, and he'd look at it, or he wouldn't look at it. Probably took it home to Terry, and that's how it happened with Mike. And speaking of Terry, here's a funny story about Terry. I'll try not to get too much off subject matter, but so we had this deal in Las Vegas, and Terry's laughing right now. And the Skull wanted us to take the 2 trucks and crush every day, do a 15-minute crush in front of Cowboy Christmas during the national finals. It was 10 days in a row. So I called Terry because I don't think there were cell phones then, but Mike didn't have one. In fact, he barely got a flip phone the other day. So I don't think he had a flip phone then. I called Terry in Chickasha. I said, "Terry, I got these dates in Las Vegas. and I'd like Mike to come out and announce. It's just a little short deal, 15 minutes a day in front of Cowboy Christmas. She goes, okay, under 2 conditions. I go, okay, what are the conditions? She goes, I get to come and you pay me. You give me the check. I'll come out there the first weekend. I'll go home. You give me the check. I go, okay, good. No problem. So anyway, Terry comes out. Mike gets there. He does the announce and everything. We agreed on some kind of price. I don't know, $500 a day, $250 a day, $50 a day, whatever it was. Give Terry the check. She flies out, kisses Mike goodbye. Well, she doesn't. She never kisses him. I think she just waves at him out of the taxi. She goes home. So Mike comes up to Meredith and I and says, hey, I'm going to be here all week. I need some money. I say, you need some money? Yeah, my check. He said, I want my check or some cash. I need some money. I said, well, didn't Terry give you money? Well, she gave me $100. I go, well, I guess that should do you. Now it's $10, more than $10 a day. And he goes, well, where's my check? I said, well, we gave it to Terry. He goes, what do you mean you gave it to Terry? So he gets on his phone or on a pay phone or somebody's phone, calls Terry. Terry's, yep, I got the check. So he never got over that. Today he still says, you make your deals with me, but that was pretty funny. But some other good arenas were Ogden. Ogden was really good because it was a complete big football field. It held about 9,700 people, and we had it sold out once or twice. And a lot of good fans in Utah. There's a couple of nice trucks up there that we got. They would, you know, we'd put into ours, and we had a big track there for the SST trucks to do, and really good fans there. And like I said, it was a whole football field, and they put sand down. We'd go in right after the rodeo, and it was really, I had a kid there that worked for me, Dave Layloli, that used to find the cars for me, and had a good pit crew there. A lot of good people that I knew from Ogden, because I used to put on the Trucking Nationals there. So we had a good pit crew. It was a lot of fun there. But those are probably my 2 favorite places. But a lot of the fairs were good. A lot of the fairs they'd book us for a show, and we'd have an afternoon show, and then the fair manager would come around and say, hey, can you do another show? I go, well, yeah, why? Well, we had to turn away 1,000 people. Our grandstand only holds 4,500 people. I said, sure, we'll stick around. So I'd talk to the drivers, and we'd clean the trucks up, fix the cars up a little bit. Then they'd start selling tickets for the second show. So a lot of those fairs were fun, and we met a lot of fans there, and just family atmosphere, and, you know, the pit parties, and, you know, the autograph sessions afterwards. And I think the fairs were a lot of fun, you know.
So speaking of Terry's, we have the legendary Hall of Famer himself, Terry Woodcock, in the comments. He said his favorite setups of all time was watching the boss haul down the road with the rocket on the open trailer pulling into the venue. Nothing out there.
Oh, well, thank you, Terry. You know, you tell me how good Terry's episode was. So I've been trying to let my hair grow out. I was hoping to get into a ponytail. It's not quite into a ponytail yet. But, well, thank you, Terry. Terry's, he's a legend. You know, he and Jeff Boehner are still going after all these years. I don't know how they do it. But, yeah, it was fun. There's some great pictures of, you know, and I don't know where they are, but I have some pictures of, we made these haulers. Jim made these haulers that were cab overs that they used to actually be for hauling travel trailers, brand new travel trailers. And we beefed up the suspension on them and hauled 2 monster trucks on each one. So we'd haul all the tires on the tractor part of it, and then the 2 trucks on the back part of it open. And of course, everybody said, why don't you get enclosed trailers? Well, we always, I wanted everybody to see this, even if they were at a hotel driving down the freeway, I wanted our sponsors to get ink. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But that was it. That we have some pictures of, you know, 4 of our trucks, and we hauled Jeff Boehner's truck, and of course the Barefoot that one year. But that was a pretty good scene, like Terry says, coming into town with those semis back to back, and they had big fuel tanks in the bellies, and they were pretty well outfitted. All had spare transmissions in them and stuff, because the transmissions were always a weak point on those trucks, you know. But it was a lot of work keeping the trucks clean and the haulers clean, and, you know, all the logbook stuff and fuel permits, and it was a lot of work. I mean, a lot of people, we made good money, but I'll tell you what, when one of them went down, or you know, you had to repaint one or things came up, the expenses were always in the thousands, you know.
Absolutely. So, Terry is known for restoring a lot of trucks. I know he's been tinkering with some of your past trucks recently. And there's a question here in the comments from Tim talking about a Skull Bandit rebuild. Pretty cool to see in the Monster Truck Museum. Is that something you've ever thought about, trying to really push the envelope on restorations or tribute trucks to be preserved in a place like?
Well, you know, it's kind of hard, you know, and I don't get it. Probably nobody gets what makes Terry move or makes him groove or what drives his mind. But a couple of things come to mind when you say that. One is, you know, Jim Reese and I have talked about this many times, and I'm not bragging or anything, but, you know, I counted the other day, I was telling my daughter, Alexis, who I think she's on this too, that, you know, the other day I was moving and I counted, I had 27 business cards, you know, so, and, you know, some of them for the same business because I got a new card, but I mean, from rodeo to monster trucks to now I work for the state treasurer, Fiona Ma, which I love my job and I love her. She's just a really great person. She's made me believe in politicians, and there are a few good ones out there. And the last 10 years I've been working side by side with her, and it's been and it's really been my dream job. And I'm an agricultural outreach person for her, and I connect her with small business and with agriculture and a lot of stuff like that. We just have a great time. We just went on a tour and did a tour of a winery, and I like trash too. We went to a recycling plant to see how they do robotic sorting now. So I've got a lot of things that I've morphed into. So with all that said, and the pickup parts and promotions and marketing, you know, some people that are really into, like Jerry Richmond is building the lethal weapon back again and stuff. I honor that, and I get it where they're coming from, but you know, Jim and I have done so many other things that it wasn't such a big chunk of our life. It was 10 years and stuff, but so there's a little bit of that mixed in with the other part of it is I really don't get it. You know, I have the pictures, I lived it, we ran it, we sold it, and it was a great truck. But to build it back up, then, you know, to spend, I don't know, $30,000, $40,000, $60,000, whatever you got to spend on it, plus all your labor, and then you've got it. And what do? You take it to a museum that nobody goes to except once a year, you know, but 52 people go to it and see it. Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't understand the end result. You know, I guess if AMPM's way out of it, they've sold 3 times. So I know approaching them to do it and say, hey, they had that truck on the Peterson Museum pole for quite a while, but once they sold and changed, now they're owned by a different group. Arco sold off that whole convenience store. And in fact, I contacted them once. They don't even know about the trucks, know what about it. So they don't have a love for it. U.S. Tobacco Company sold 3 times since we were involved with them. And they don't really want that kind of promoting anymore. They got out of racing, Harry Gant. They got totally out of open wheel racing because of the, you know, tobacco limited advertising. So I guess maybe if we had made a truck for Mattel or Coors or something, that I thought maybe they might be interested in building one and having it on display at the museum. I might try to pursue it, but it just hasn't been anything that has entered into my mind that thought, oh, that seems like a fun thing to do. And, you know, I don't know, maybe it's a legacy thing for some people, you know, which is great, but I have a lot of pictures, a lot of memories, and my kids do too. And I still have a lot of posters. I have these fan packages I put together that people will call me, hey, do you have this? Yeah, I say, hey, I got 55 different items for $200 and I'll pay the shipping. You get a t-shirt, a VCR, you know, a hat pin, magazines, show flyers. All right, I'll take it, you know. And so people eat those up, but I don't know. I don't get it. I guess I just don't get the reason for building it. And I kind of wish that museum was, I'm going to go ahead and say it, and Mike Galloway's telling me to bite my tongue, but I kind of wish it was a little bit better organized as far as organizational. For instance, I still haven't gotten our entry. We were supposed to get an introduction tape when we got introduced to it, and we didn't get it, but that's okay. but it's also kind of in the middle of nowhere, and I understand why it is because the rent's good. But I kind of think that a place like Orlando or a place like LA by the Peterson Museum, I'm kind of thinking that if you did some politicking with the state of California, you could probably get a building to house a Hall of Fame and run it like a real Hall of Fame. Have it real people in there that are that are supposed to be in there. And I'm not saying that anybody's in there isn't supposed to be in there, but just more of a structured situation. And I enjoyed the year I was back there. I was really surprised. I got to see a lot of people. They tried to put me in a few years, like 2 or 3 years before I went in. And I said, I'm honored and I respect it. But I'm not going in till Mike Galloway or Jimmy goes in, especially Jimmy, because it'd be counterproductive. It wouldn't be right for me to stand up there and accept any kind of award without Jimmy by my side, because without Jimmy, I wouldn't have ever had a monster truck or ever thought of building one. So when they went ahead and put Jimmy in, they said, hey, Jimmy got the votes this year, and so did Mike Galloway. I said, hey, that's perfect. I'm coming in. And a lot of people have asked about Meredith, that she needs to be in there. She was, as far as I know, she was the first female monster truck driver, professional. A lot of women, I think Marilyn, whatever, drove a couple of times. But I mean, as far as going to stadiums and being advertised as the driver of the truck, magazine covers. She was in People Magazine, Star, on Access Hollywood, all those kind of things. But I said, Meredith's kind of the same way. She's moved on. She owns 2 big magazines, national magazines on the wine and spirits industry. And, she enjoyed her time there. But, I think she'd be honored, but I don't even know if she'd go back. She's so busy with stuff. In fact, tonight I said, oh, you're going to listen? She goes, I have to be at a restaurant for a review at 6 o'clock. Okay, goodbye. No big deal. But she and I are still really good friends. But that's the story about the legend trucks, or the building those trucks. But maybe someday I'll have a different deal, just like Jimmy bought the Eliminator back because the price was right and he hated to see it go to scrap or whatever. And it runs. And in fact, we had a reunion a year ago in June and had a lot of the drivers there. Robert Parker came out for it, Dale Boucher came out for it, Todd Blazer, and we had a really good gathering. Gary Sarton drove down with me, and my kids were there, Mike Galloway, and we had kind of a reunion of all the drivers. It was a lot of fun, and he had the Eliminator there. We fired it up, and then what do you do with it? I don't know.
So what an interesting tale there. My question for this next one is just a little bit of switching subjects here. Everybody is really aware of the Monster Truck Racing Association, but you kind of had something like that, I believe. Do you mind talking about the American Monster Truck Association?
Yeah, well, it was about the time that before MTRA came along, when that was a great organization. They had their best their best layout, and they had the best intentions, everything. But before they came out, I saw that SRO Pace was doing these safety checks and safety things. And, we got to the fire suits, the helmets and stuff. And I said, Meredith and I talked about, hey, why do we create an association that we could say, American Monster Truck Association, and we'll do our own safety checks. And then we can publicize that on when we go to the fairs, conventions and stuff like that. Because some of the there'd been some accidents. And of course we were insured with K&K most of the time. And we always took lots of pictures. And some of these monster truck shows I used to go to, they had no K rails, no safety, runoff area and everything. And so we really didn't want to get shut down. We never, knock on wood, we never had an accident that involved anybody in the crowd at any of our shows. Never any was ever in danger. So we wanted to put kind of a little logo on our posters and a logo on our promotional stuff. And so it was basically just an in-house thing that said, we're certifying these rules are being followed and stuff like that. And I still have rule books and decals that people buy the rule books and decals. And There's BB in the background. She's enjoying this. But anyway, so that's where the American Monster Truck Association came from. But we never really, marketed it as trying to get members, and you didn't have to pay dues or anything. It was just like, hey, if you came to our shows, we inspect your trucks. You have drive shaft hoops. You have a scatter shield. You're wearing a helmet. You got a, roll cage, 5 harness, seat belt. You have all the necessary things. You're in. Come on, run it,
So back in the 80s there, you were kind of one of the first mega teams out there with multiple trucks and obviously a lot of different identities. And there wasn't really too many teams out there like that. One of the big notable ones is obviously the original monster truck, Bigfoot. Bob Chandler always had a big fleet of trucks. And it seems like your paths would always kind of go one way or the other way. What was your relationship like with Bigfoot back in those early days?
Well, he was a Ford truck. We were Chevy, so there was always that Ford-Chevy rivalry. And, the only time we really ran into him ever was at the SRO Pace shows. And, it was always congenial and they always ran hard. We always ran hard. But he always, he had multiple trucks, but they were all Bigfoot trucks till he did the snakebite truck, to my knowledge anyway. And now I think he has, then later on, maybe towards the end, he did a Samson truck. But so our idea was to haul 2, my marketing kicked in that I want to haul 2 trucks with different sponsors to the same show and have 2 drivers, in other words, but the same fuel took them there and the same hotel rooms. And, in other words, minimize my expenses, but get paid 2 paychecks. So that was our goal, instead of having 10 Skull Bandit trucks all at different shows all over the United States, so that's how we differed. But one kind of a interesting thing that I heard when I was at the Hall of Fame, I heard a few little tales I had no idea about, that when, like I said before, when we went to the shows, I think, Jimmy would change the pill in the barefoot truck or in the Eliminator if we were going to Ogden, or altitude things, a little bit of adjustment. But we never took the gearbox. He'd never call up Jim Harris and say, hey, or you got a figure 8, or what kind of racer we got? Okay, we got to change the SCS drop box. We got to put 5/4s in it, or all this kind of craziness. We just kind of went there and ran the same truck that was on display, or that was at a pulling a sled at a tractor pull the night before, or whatever. So this one driver, who will remain nameless, and if he wants to chime in on the chat box, he can say it was me. But he came up to me and he just said, I just want to tell you that your trucks always ran hard, and I said, oh, really? I said, well, thank you. I said, we just kind of brought what we brought, and he goes, I want you to know that we used to go out to BDS blower drive service, and they had, I don't know if they went to Wilmington or some track, and we used to gear up our trucks and run them because we knew your trucks were going to be there. And that was probably the biggest. I said, really? I said, you're shitting me. And he goes, no, really? And I go, well, that's the biggest compliment I ever got, because we just kind of showed up with whatever we took out of the garage, And so that showed me, when I was talking to Freddie Schaefer the other day, he and I had about a 2-hour talk. It was really good catching up with him. He's doing real well, and he and Kathy are doing well. And they're just the best people on earth. And he and I were laughing about it. He goes, yeah, Chandler knew your trucks ran hard. You bet he wanted to have his best gear in there. But anyway, that's kind of funny. But other than that, that was about it. I've seen him a couple of times at SEMA and stuff. And, it was funny. Somebody remarked that when you guys posted on Facebook about, the man behind the trucks, and somebody put, is Bob going to be on? And so I wrote, Bob who? And then he goes, Bob Chandler. I go, I don't think I know that name. So anyway.
So another question here. Speaking of Fred Schaefer and Barefoot, I had seen him on another show the other week, and I had asked him, what did it take to get licensing like that to, what was the qualifications to run such a high profile truck like Barefoot? And I'm kind of curious, what trucks were you like given permission to use, like Samson and Barefoot, etc.? Like what what were their like qualifications? How hard did you have to run them, etc.?
Well, the barefoot truck, we just leased it, so to speak, from Fred Schaefer. So that truck came with the name. And when I bought Hawaiian Punch, from Brian Cardiff, the second truck that they built. And I don't even think he ran it very much before I bought it. And all of a sudden he needed to sell it for some reason. And so I bought it. It was a nice truck, and we got it really decent. Well, I immediately went to Del Monte, who owned Hawaiian Punch at the time, and said, hey, we got this truck. We'd like to license. Well, they threw a fit. They said, well, no way, no how. You can't call that the Hawaiian Punch Crunch. And, that was made through a local bottling company, and they didn't have the rights to do that. So we immediately, it kind of worked out good because Goodyear had been bugging us to build a truck, and we've been real busy. And so we ended up painting as a Goodyear Flying Eagle, and it worked really well. And Todd Blazer drove that. He drove it as the Hawaiian Punch Crunch for a while till we got it repainted. We got approval from them to run it till we had time to paint it. And but as far as licensing, it came with a sponsorship with AM/PM, US Tobacco. And speaking of that, there was a truck that never was. I was looking for the drawing of it. We ran into Roger Penske at the Long Beach Grand Prix, and we were sitting in his, fairly nice pusher motorhome, talking to him. Nice guy, real nice guy. And he goes, hey, I want to build a Penske monster truck. And so he said, okay, what's it going to cost? It's going to cost this, and we'll do this many displays, and this is what they cost per display, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's do it. Put an agreement together. So we had our attorneys write up an agreement. Well, about the last minute, one of his attorneys put the squelch on it, said, hey, you don't want your name on a monster truck. And I don't know if the attorney had seen an accident or whatever, but this guy's racing Indy cars, and he's involved in all this other racing. I can't imagine the liability was that strong. But anyway, so that was a truck, one of the trucks that never happened, that was like within, I would say, days of having a signed agreement for. But normally when we did the sponsorship, we got the licensing agreement for it. And of course, we get the licensing agreement for the product and the signage on the truck, and then the image. We always kept the image of the truck as our property.
Well, it's time for the next segment of our show. It's probably the fan favorite on the show. It's personally my favorite. It's Explain That Photo. Pretty simple. We got a photo sent to us, and we'll bring it up on the screen. You have to explain that photo. I think Levi had a photo he picked out. Levi, you want to bring that photo up on the screen?
Sure. There it is right there. So explain this right here. I know this is Santa Barbara, and I was brushing up on some history on you, and I never knew about this truck. So please tell us what this stunt truck is about here.
Well, by the way, I still have that truck. And well, I wanted to do a truck act. I used to do clown acts in the rodeo, and I wanted to do a little filler act. So this friend of mine, Steve Tilford and John Tilford and Henry Weir in Santa Barbara, built that truck. It's a 60 Morse Minor pickup, and it actually spits. I have a video. If anybody wants to message me, I'll send them a video of it. But it breaks actually in half, and it's one of the few vehicles. A lot of people have cars that break in half, or a bed that comes off, but it actually, behind the door, those Morse Minors were bolted together. So when it comes apart, it actually comes apart. So I used to come into the arena two different ways. This way I came in as, one of the biggest monster truck drivers in the world, and I've got all these sponsors, and I'd pull in there, Galloway, and I had a blast with it. I'd say, these are all my sponsors. And he'd say, have your sponsors ever seen the truck? And I said, I got $2 million in sponsorship here. The door would fall off of it. It'd catch on fire and fireworks. And then when I'd leave the sellout, it'd go around the arena, and it'd break in half. So I've been trying to sell it for a while, thinking a rodeo clown. I mean, I used to do rodeos with it too. And back in the day, I'd get like, $750 a performance for it. You could pay for it in about a month, but I haven't had any takers, but it's ready to go if anybody wants to do a clown act. It's all built with a Ford Escort running gear, front wheel drive, 87, I think it was Ford Escort. So it runs real nice.
Okay.
I think
More
your
known
mic.
for owning. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here now.
All right. So I know you weren't necessarily known for owning, or well, for driving the monster trucks. Excuse me. You were known for more owning them, but this was the. I noticed in this video I was watching on YouTube. This was the one truck that you drove when it split in half, or when you blew it up. You know, that is literally you in that photo.
Right. Yeah. Well, I used to always tell people, they go, why don't you drive the trucks? I go, well, there's got to be somebody behind the scenes. You know, there's always a woman behind the scenes or the man behind the scenes. But, you know, I used to fight bulls for a living and get paid to get run over by 2,000-pound bulls. But I didn't want to strap myself into a, 14,000-pound truck with 1,000 horsepower and crush cars. It didn't seem like something that I wanted to put my body through.
I hear you there for sure. On to our next photo here. Explain this one, whoever picked this one.
Well, that's Gary Sarton, and I met him. He worked for Flying U Rodeo Company. I hired him, and he drove the original Skull Bandit, and that's the Skull Bandit 2. And he really loved that truck, and he loved the first one too. But one of the best drivers. He lives about 20 minutes from me. We haven't had breakfast in a while. We used to go to breakfast about once a month, but really good guy. And he worked for me through the heydays and took good care of the semis. Great, real good truck driver. He was one of the few guys that knew how to drive truck when he came to work for me. He and Warren Davis. But Steve Helm, Jim Reese, and Dale Boucher, they'd never driven truck before. Either had Robert Parker, I don't think. In fact, when I hired Robert Parker, he kind of came with Samson. I actually got him before Samson. And Don Maples had never let him do anything but roll the tires around. He'd never driven a semi and never driven a monster truck. So right away, I got him driving a semi and driving a monster truck. And I said, you got to be, we don't just have tire jockeys around here.
Show me my picture. So I found this snooping around the internet. I'm not quite sure if you had any involvement with this proposal, but if you do,
don't know anything about it. Never seen it before. Never seen it before.
Oh, wow. Gotcha. That's the old Bream Boys truck. So I figured Skull kind of had their hand in a couple different truck pictures, I guess, back in the day. But that's a testament to you and your skills for getting the sponsorship and running the deal yourself. Oh, we have a comment here. Brian Maybe, he drove Samson that day. Oh, so this will probably lead into my next question here. J.E. Sproul, he would love to hear about the prank played on Lorenzo Lamas when Samson won an Ecology Eliminator, crushed a Mustang convertible he was purchasing.
I don't have any news on that one. There was a lot of things that were done. I'm not going to say without my knowledge, but there was so much stuff going on. And Jim Reese pretty much called the shots. I knew about him. I knew they were happening. The Beverly Hillbillies truck, the UPS truck, and some of the TV shows. There was also a Mountain Dew commercial that somebody backed over a convertible full of girls. And I guess everybody lived and we didn't get sued over that. But and then there's a lot of music videos that we did. And I knew about him, but Jim pretty much did all the negotiating and the making sure the trucks were there and what they needed was there. And it was a lot that was kind of stuck in 10 years. There was a lot of stuff going on, and selling trucks and buying trucks and fixing trucks and building trucks. And like I said, the pickup parts business got busier and busier. And so it was hard. It was hard for me to have my fingers on everything, I think Meredith also did some kind of a shot with it was Good Morning LA or Good Night LA that they did in conjunction with the forum and this was all this stuff was done. All these pictures you see of my poster stuff, there was no photoshopping back in those days. Like there's a picture of the Bruce Smith, who was a great photographer for Four Wheel and Magazine. He wanted both Skull trucks to hit cars simultaneously and take a wheelie towards each other. And I said, well, I don't know. And, that was before photoshopping, and we did it, and it came out really nice. I used it for the centerfold calendar in 1988, I think it was. But so they wanted Meredith to act like she was running over a bunch of cars on the freeway. So they did something out on the freeway somewhere with Meredith driving, and because she loved it, rush hour traffic. But I wasn't there for the shoot, and it showed up on this, Good Night LA or something. But
so I'm gonna need some redemption here. I just received a picture from Chris Mormanis, and he asked me if I could pull it up on here, and here it is. What do you know about this scene?
Well, that looks like it was at Sacramento at the State Fair, and I think that's where Gravedigger rolled over. And there's only about Terry Woodcock, I think, rolled a truck on us, and then Gravedigger did too. I've never seen that photo. That's pretty cool, Chris. Thanks for sharing it. He's a good guy, real close friend of mine. He came out to our reunion. But yeah, that was Gravedigger was always so busy. But I think Lyle Hancock drove there, if I remember right. But he was really close to my son Travis, so I think Travis is listening. And in fact, Travis stayed up with maybe Excalibur that night, who broke a couple axles. I think Travis was up all night long helping Gravedigger and Excalibur work on their trucks that night. It was a good memory for him, I'm sure.
So I believe we have 2 more photos to bring up if we would like to bring them up, if Vinny has them. Oh, there we go. That's Santa Barbara and the Rocket there. Explain this photo.
Well, that shows the SST track there, that hard pan, track for the SST trucks. And I really like that picture. Warren Winch was a big sponsor of us, and that's Dale Boucher driving. And that was one of my favorite trucks. I like the color scheme on it. I thought the colors really came out nice on it. And it always ran really well, of course. But it had a little bit different sound than the Bandit did, the Skull Bandit 2. Although they were built almost at the same time, had identical motors, identical SCS drop boxes, and so on and so forth, planetaries. But just something about that truck had a little bit different sound to it.
And I think we have one more photo we're pulling up here. Skull Bandit 2 once again. What is this photo here?
That was taken in front of the shop in Buena Park. And that was actually, they were doing another poster shoot, and they shot that picture for, I think, a foreign poster. And I just always liked that shot. It just looked really tall. And I never, those bumpers on there, I guess they're kind of halfway sought after now, but I bet you we threw away 10 of those brand new in the box, so we got rid of the trucks. But somebody was telling me they're sought after.
So, I was talking to my buddy Brian Anger earlier in the day, and he's a big toy collector, and we know you have the deal with Greenlight. One of the first trucks that they did was the Golf Super Special truck. Now, we've talked about a lot of the lucrative sponsorships you had with AMPM and U.S. Tobacco, but how did you get a hold of Golf, and where did the Golf Super Special truck fit into the rest of your truck lineup?
Well, it's funny, back to Chris. Chris actually alerted me that they were building that Golf truck. He heard about it somewhere. I didn't even know green light from red light, So I got a hold of them and said, "Oh, you're building you're going to introduce this Golf truck." And the guy goes, "Yeah, we have a licensing agreement with Golf." And I said, "Well, that's great, but you don't have a licensing agreement with me." "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I own the truck." Oh, well, we'll have somebody call you. So their attorneys called us. And from the get-go, I said, "Why are you doing that truck?" "Well, we have the Golf license." I said, "Well, if you had the license for, squeaky toilet paper, would you do a squeaky toilet paper truck?" I said, "That truck was only seen by a half a dozen people. It was never in any magazines to my knowledge. It was only at about 4 or 5 shows. It was only that paint scheme for a couple of months." I said, "Why don't you do the Boss? It has exactly the same body style." And I said, "You could have Meredith on the card of it. She was the first female monster truck driver, and she could do a fake autograph on him." I said, "I think she's got a better fan following than that truck." "Oh, well, we already have the Golf thing." And so anyway, we put a deal together with the Golf. And then soon after that, they did the Boss. And then they did the Rocket after that. So But they didn't take me up my idea with Meredith, which I don't think she cares one way or the other about it. But I just thought that would be a good way to get, people who want her to sign the truck or whatever, another selling pitch,
Yeah, it's just speaking more on Greenlight. There's been a lot of requests, obviously, for the Skull trucks and the Hawaiian Punch truck, and of course, the Ecology Eliminator. That's my biggest request, at least. Can you go into why some of those can be made or can't be made, etc.?
Well, the body style for the Hawaiian Punch would be tough because I don't think they make another 86 body style truck yet. Now, when they do that, then that would probably be in line, but they'd have to go to Del Monte to get that because I didn't really own that mark. The Skull trucks, I think, would be like I mentioned before, I don't think they have any interest because they didn't even have interest in, when I was still running with them, to do T-shirts anymore or any kind of merchandise that might end up in kids' hands. So, and they look at those things, even though we look at them as collectibles and we have them around our office, they look at them as a toy. So I'm pretty sure that Skull would be a no. Now, with that said, I'm kind of surprised that nobody has taken some of the existing Greenlight trucks and painted them up like Skull Bandits, because these guys are kind of repurposing trucks. But the Eliminator would be tough to do just because it has the unique wheel openings and it has that 9.5, 10-inch longer hood, that to do it right, like when they, I want it to be right. So I wouldn't approve the drawing unless it really looked like the Eliminator. They just can't take, the latest style of the USA 1 Everett's truck and make that into the Eliminator because it wouldn't be the Eliminator. So I think those are probably a pretty hard do for them because they want to do trucks that they could do multiple trucks of.
So also talking with Chris Romanis, I know he had a comment earlier on in the podcast, and he asked, talk about selling Bandit 1 and Flying Eagle to the Japan salesman.
Well, that kind of came about through Ascot Raceway. Chris Agajanian was a good friend through U.S. Tobacco Company, and we used to take the trucks over there to his races at Ascot. And then for you people that aren't in California, there's a real famous open-wheel dirt track down in Gardena, California, or thereabouts at the end of the 91. And that's where we took our trucks over there to field test all of them. All the first crushes happened at Ascot, and a lot of the poster shots were taken there. But so Chris, there were some Japanese people that he knew that happened to be at one of his races and saw the Bandit there. So they came up to the driver there and said, hey, who's the owner? They got a hold of us anyway. They wanted to buy the monster trucks to take them to Japan. And so they came to Sacramento. We were having a show in Sacramento, and that's where the deal was actually made at the show. And I think Sacramento was like August 25th or thereabouts, around this time of year. So we went ahead and did the shows that we had scheduled for the trucks and then sold them to them, and sold them for a pretty good chunk of money. And then they ended up coming back and buying Samson, and they might even have bought the Crusher too. I'm not exactly sure. If they didn't buy him, somebody that they turned on to bought them, and they bought the Skull Bandit panel truck too.
Just going through some of our older Facebook comments here, and Dustin Spallone makes, it's not a question, but it's a good point. He says, it's interesting how the evolution of marketing and sponsorships have developed in the industry, and I feel that the Skull trucks and the AMPM trucks helped introduce marketing partnerships like we see today. So he's kind of saying, like, you've inspired some of those big sponsors, like, say, Lucas Oil or Protect the Harvest or stuff like that to come into the sport.
Yeah, well, Protect the Harvest, of course, you may or may not know, that's part of Lucas Oil. I think it's the daughter or, sister-in-law or something. They're somehow connected to Lucas Oil, so that's probably how that came together. Yeah, but it was kind of a natural, for me, because it was a big truck and everybody wanted to see him. And I don't know if they create as much excitement now as they did. I know that, a lot of people, Fred finally pitched Dodge and finally got Dodge on board, and I had pitched them because of Dodge Rodeo. I knew them. Now they're Ram, and I know Raminator has had a good run with them, and I think they're also with that hot seat, whatever it is, steam cleaner. But the key to the sponsorship, whether you're selling any kind of sponsorship, where it's a race car or anything at all, you got to find out what the sponsor you're pitching, what their end product is, what they want to use you for to market their product. So a lot of people just think, oh, well, Sundowner Chevrolet would like to have a Chevrolet monster truck. Well, they have one dealership. So how many people are going to come out every Saturday to see a monster truck crush at that one Chevrolet dealership? But if you can get the Southern California Chevrolets to sponsor a monster truck, like we got the Southern California GMC dealers to sponsor the Boss. And a lot of people don't know that the Boss was GMC for a while. And we changed it to GMC. We took it to SEBA for GMC. And we ran GMC, and the Southern California GMC dealerships gave us a big sponsorship for it. And we went to a lot of GMC dealerships because they had multiple dealerships. So they saw their return on investment. So a lot of people just try to sell a sponsor without the end game. And so Meredith and I tried to look at A&P and what do they really want out of a truck or Skoal, it's a lot of work. It's not just keeping a truck clean and going and racing at monster truck shows. It's more. There's a whole lot more other stuff going on. Getting people. We had a publicist that got us in the People magazine, got us into Star magazine. They're one of the reasons we were in 27 magazines on the cover of about 15 with different trucks, or some of the same trucks. But like Bigfoot's been on a lot of covers, probably more than anybody. But a lot of them were just the same truck over and over on covers, or they look the same. People, a lot of people, Chris can tell 11 from 12 and 5 from 4 and all that stuff, and Tom Montgomery can, but I don't know one from another. But so one of the main reasons we got on so many magazines because we were in LA, and that's where the magazines were, and that's where a lot of the editors were, and so Steve Stillwell, Brian McCormick, these guys who were editors, Mike Magna with Four Wheel and Off Road, Steve Campbell, they loved us, and we loved them because they knew they could call us. Hey, like the one cover that I really like of the A&P and Boss, Jimmy took it down to some beach and they got kicked off finally, but they got enough shots. But he ran through the ocean with it, and they got a really good cover shot. He said it was one of the best selling covers they ever had, and I still have a lot of copies of those. They used to send me like 200 magazines of every magazine, so we send it out to the sponsors and everything. Well, when it was all over with, I still had 150 of those magazines, so I've been selling those for the last 10 years, and a lot of people enjoy those magazines. But so that was one of our keys to success is being in LA, where if you're in Kentucky or you're in Texas or whatever, it's a little harder to get those magazines to respond to you, because we could take a monster truck anywhere they wanted to. If they just said, hey, the one up there in the left-hand corner, that used 4x4, I think it was Mike Magda that got a hold of me when he was with, I think that was a Peterson one shot, if I'm not mistaken. And he says, hey, we're doing a truck on used 4x4s. We'd like to put the Skoal Bandit. So I drove that truck, and the truck next to it, you could barely see beside it, was my dad's 4-wheel drive international truck. We're going to do a thing about buying used 4x4s. And the truck was down at my shop, which is about 3 blocks away. So I drove it tired up there and back, and never got a ticket or anything. Jimmy was shaking his head. I drove trucks like that. Like I drove it there, but I never drove over a car. So that was kind of fun. I said, well, let me drive it. I'll take the ticket. And like Desert Dynamics used our truck on the cover of their catalog that one year. So it was, we got a lot of press. The Lethal Weapon, that was actually the first show we ever did with Lethal Weapon, because Lethal Weapon, when Jerry Richmond built it, he sold it to us like right away, because we didn't have a Ford truck, and I wanted a Ford truck of my own because that Ford Chevy Challenge at Galloway, likes to build that up. How many Ford fans we got, and so we bought that truck from Jerry, and we actually ran it in Montana after we picked it up from, I think Todd Blazer went after it, or Warren Davis. We ran it at Montana once at the Montana State Fair, and then we took it to Paso Robles, that picture. So Bruce Smith wanted to shoot it for the cover because it hadn't been shot for the cover yet. So he shot it for that, and he also shot it for Monster Truck Poster Book at Paso Robles. But I've got a funny story. You want to hear a funny story about Todd Blazer?
Oh, please do.
So he used to race quads, and he wanted to race quads, and that's how I met him. He was doing quads. He'd get up on two wheels, and he'd jump from ramp to ramp on cars, you know. So we built in this really cool ramp with wheels, and Jimmy spent all this time engineering it. We had to haul this damn ramp around. Well, one time this ramp broke, and Todd said, just put 2 pieces of plywood there. I'll do it with 2 pieces of plywood. Hell, he jumped 5 cars with 2 pieces of plywood on his ATV. Jimmy was so mad. He says, I mean, we could have been hauling 2 pieces of plywood around all year long, and you could have done this. So anyway, Todd's racing quads at Antioch, and he breaks his collarbone. He flips it. You know, and I knew this was going to happen. You know, he was driving a monster truck by then and doing his act. I said, you really screwed yourself up. So we'd leave Antioch and drive all the way to Montana State Fair. And I get up there, and while I was driving up there, I got a hold of the motorcycle shop there that was sponsoring the ATV races, the quad race. I said, hey, my jumper is hurt. He broke his collarbone. I said, I need a jumper. I said, it's really easy to do. You just hammer down, you hit one ramp, you land on the other ramp. Oh, I've got just a guy for you. I got just a guy for you. This guy can do it. So he does it. And it's a little building, probably one of the smallest buildings we've been in. It's barely a hockey field, you know, basketball court, dirt floor. So we run out there, and I don't know, Warren and I and Jimmy were putting this ramp up there. Well, somebody forgets to lock the wheels down on it. This kid hits that ramp, and the inertia from the quad pulls the ramp back, and he loses his forward momentum. He crashes on the catch ramp, and his hands go off the handlebar, and he hits it right in his armpits. And I went over there and said, great job. You sold it out. People are just cheering. He almost had a bad wreck, you know. So the next night I took duct tape. He said, well, I don't know how to keep my hands on the handlebar. So I took duct tape and duct taped his hands to the handlebar. And he didn't lose the handlebar that time, but that was pretty funny. But we had some good times.
Well, a lot of great times, and you've had a lot of different people in your trucks. So we've talked about, I think, almost every single notable person. But one thing a lot of people don't realize, and especially a lot of the newer monster truck fans, is that you never drove your trucks in the events. What was the reason for that?
Well, like I kind of touched on it before. I mean, I like to have trucks that were identified with the driver, you know, and I didn't want them to build a truck for me, and then I'd have to have a driving suit on and sign autographs, all that stuff. And I kind of wanted to keep the show going anyway. I wanted to be the ground guy. You know, if there was a lull, I'd, you know, do some kind of clown act out there or something, and, you know, open up a trunk and find a blow-up doll in the trunk or something, you know, or, you know, Galloway and I had a stick going all the time out there. And so, and I had, like I said, I really didn't feel like beating my body up. I mean, Jimmy got beat up. He's had a couple of neck surgeries and back surgeries, and I'm sure Jim Kramer has too, and all the guys that did it for a living. And I put my body through a lot of beating up when I was fighting bulls, and I didn't have the love for it. I mean, I loved the sport. I loved promoting it and being out there and driving the SST trucks, but I just never had the real want to do it. You know, I got into the sport because I was a promoter and selling the sponsorship and making the sponsors happy and stuff. And I didn't want to take the spotlight off of Dale and Robert and Jimmy and Meredith and stuff. But Meredith got kind of momentary paralysis. She kind of paralyzed herself for a while at Bakersfield one year. She did there's a picture of her doing a pretty good wheelie with a real dirty boss picture where she was doing some good wheelies. And she got real good at that thing. She really got her timing down right. And it landed on the back bumper and stood up on the back bumper. And she went down on her tailbone. And when she got out of the truck, she was couldn't walk for a while. But I mean, it didn't slow her down. She kept driving after that. But you know, it wasn't even with all the safety equipment and stuff. It still, your body could take a little pounding. That's for sure.
Well, as you can see here, I'm going to derail real quick and just remind people that are still watching, if you have a question for Seth, ask it. He's obviously a book full of knowledge and stories and all that. If you still have questions, please ask it. Like our good buddy here, Lee Plato, who wants to know, what did these trucks cost to build and sell for back in the day?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. They kind of evolved and got more expensive as you know, Jimmy started using more chrome moly this and better Heim joints, and better drive lines and stuff. And, there was always the unknown of the labor. The labor was, we had 4 full-time guys working on them, 3 guys actually wrenching on them, an engine builder building the engine, a runner running after parts every day, so we never really tabulated all the nuts and bolts of it real hard, and probably better that we didn't. But I'm going to say they ranged in the price of, $55,000 to $75,000. And, for the most part, we sold them for more than that after we, and of course the sponsors paid a lot more than that for them every year. So they made money for us every year. But, that's about what I remember the cost was. And like I said, we didn't figure in Jimmy's time and money, and and a lot of the stuff was sponsored. Thank God, the tires were all sponsored. SCS would help us on the drop boxes, maybe give us 2 for 1 price. And, maybe they even, Jimmy would have to answer this, if they actually gave us free drop boxes. And planetaries we had to do. We got really, we just tried to get the best deal we could on parts to keep the cost down. But even the Bandit with, Alan Boyce, helping us out with the 5-ton axles and the stuff that put the first Bandit together, and the free motor, we might have only been in the Bandit for $35,000. I'm not sure, but, in those days that was pretty good money. But, some of the trucks we sold really right, like of course the Beverly Hills Hillbilly truck, that had a long history of being different trucks, because it was Lethal Weapon, of course. And then when we sold the first Cope Skull Crusher, we painted it, because we didn't have any sponsorship involved with Lethal Weapon other than just Goodyear and the regular sponsors that paid us for showing up, the Warren Winch. We got a little snippet from Warren Winch, and everybody that had a decal on there paid us something. Smitty built and things like that. But, we painted it Copenhagen Skull Crusher because we had the sponsorship with them. We sold the Crusher, the 66 truck. And then Warren started driving that. That was after Steve left, or right about the time Steve left. And then when the Beverly Hillbillies came to us and wanted a monster truck, we worked together with George Barris. George Barris actually built the cabinet, or the body of the Beverly Hillbillies truck, and Jimmy actually drove it in the Beverly Hillbillies movie. He had a wig on and stuff, and I think he's in the credits there, Monster Truck Jim Reese, or Jim Monster Truck Reese, something like that. But so we made that as a Beverly Hillbillies truck, and then we sold it as the Beverly Hillbillies truck. And now Jerry Richmond has it, putting it back as the Lethal Weapon. But I don't know. I think we just scrapped that body. But the body for the Eliminator came from a company out of Canada that was making Zambonis then. So we were able to buy bodies for that year truck, a complete body with wiring and everything, for about $6,000, bumper to bumper, brand new. So that's what the Eliminator came from, a brand new. That truck had never had anybody sitting in it, driving it, or anything. It was a brand new truck. And then he stretched out the front end on it and built it from there. But the rest of the bodies, like the Skull Bandit truck, it was originally a 56 Cameo, and Jimmy's dad, Jack, had that. That was his shop truck. So I bought it from Jimmy's dad. It was a 56 Cameo. But I decided we need to make it a 58 Cameo because that's rarer than the 56. So we put a 56 or 58 front end on it, and they ran it as a 58 Cameo all that time. And then the Crusher was just a truck that we bought. And then all of the 72 body style trucks were just, graveyard trucks, or trucks that we bought that had good bodies on them.
We have another fan question from Frank. He wants to know, was there an AM/PM Boss Toy RC truck made in the late, early 90s?
I saw something, a Boss truck, remote control truck somewhere, but I don't know about it, or somebody brought it to my attention at one point, but it was nothing that we were involved in or that AM/PM was involved in. And it probably just said the Boss on it, if I'd have to guess. But a lot of people ask me about that Boss truck. The best deal I ever made on a truck was a truck that ended up on the pole at Peterson Museum. That's when they shot Biggie, out in front of the Peterson Museum. If you Google Biggie Smalls shot in car or whatever, you'll see a picture of the AM/PM Boss up on the pole. So AM/PM got a hold of us and said, "Oh, we want to put an AM/PM Boss monster truck. We want you to build us a truck to put up on this pole. How much is it going to cost?" I can't remember. Say $100,000. Okay. So they go, okay. And so we made the deal and everything. Then I find out they want a hollowed out motor, no oil, nothing in the trans. They just wanted a skin of the truck with no axles inside, nothing, but they wanted new tires. And so we really made out on that deal because we ended up using the bent frame from the Skull Bandit truck that Gary had rolled at Fresno to build that truck to put up on the pole. So somebody bought it when it came down, and they ended up calling me and they go, "Hey, I bought this truck. It was the old AM/PM Boss. It doesn't have any axles in it, and the motor's just a fake motor and stuff." I go, "Yeah. Well, what's up with that?" I go, "Well, that's how they wanted it." It's so funny. I mean, I think he thought he was going to be able to put a battery in it and start running it.
We have another question here from Dan Wyatt. He wants to know what happened with the Team Bigfoot and Samson truck deal.
Okay, you really want me to go into this, right? So
Yes.
I got a couple of people texting me. They want me to send this afterwards because they got busy. So I'm sure you'll give me a link to it. Well, okay, I'm just going to call. I'll tell you exactly how it happened, okay? So we did that big show in St. Joseph Fairgrounds in Evansville, Indiana, with, I don't know, whatever it was, 37, 42 trucks. And there was the monster trike was there and everything. We produced that whole show. That was in like 86, 87 in there. They did a Peterson sponsored, and they did a magazine on it, the world's largest monster truck show, whatever. And it was all a Peterson production thing. We did it for Peterson. So I'd hired a lot of trucks, Fred Schaefer. I mean, a lot of the people that got to know me that ran for me later, Kurt Dabney and, a lot of those trucks that were there, Outlaw, New Jersey Outlaw and stuff. We met them there. Well, I met Don Maples there, and I kind of liked his truck. It was different. It had the 73s, and it sounded good. And it was built pretty good, but it was a frame, just bolt, welded on another frame kind of a thing, which, wasn't my style. But I liked the truck, and I really liked Robert Parker. In fact, Robert Parker was probably more of the reason I bought that truck than Don Maples or the truck. So we made a deal with Don Maples there. We gave a deposit, and he says, "Well, the only trouble is," and I never know why. I don't know why Jerry Richmond wanted to sell his truck, or Brian Cardiff, or Don Maples. I never really asked them, "Well, why are you selling it?" They just go, "Do you want to buy my truck?" And I go, "Okay." Well, so he says, "Well, I got a couple of shows I've already got contracted with." I go, "Well, you could use it. I mean, just as long as we'll come and pick it up when you're done with those shows." I don't know. This is like in May, I think the show was, and we were going to pick it up in July or something. And so as long as it looks like this and doesn't have a blown motor in it, and actually Robert Parker was going to be there, and he knew he had a job with this. So I kind of figured, well, that'll be kind of cool because, Robert Parker will kind of look after my interest in this thing. Right. So then, I get busy. We get busy with our shows. And all of a sudden Robert Parker calls me and goes, "Hey," he goes, "Bigfoot just came and picked up that truck." I go, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Yeah, they just hauled it away on, one of Chandler's tractors backed onto Don's trailer." Because I didn't buy his trailer because I didn't need a trailer. I had plenty of trailers, and it was kind of a, carnival trailer anyway. So I go, "What do you mean?" So anyway, I contacted Bigfoot, and I don't know if it was Bob or whoever was running the outfit then, or got on the phone, said, "What are you talking about? We bought that truck." So I just said, "Okay, I'll talk to you later." So I hung up, and I called Freddie because I knew Freddie had some lawsuits with Chandler. Chandler tried to stop Freddie from running his truck because it looked too much like a barefoot truck or a Bigfoot truck. And because it was called Barefoot and it was painted blue, that people would get the two confused, the foot and the foot. Well, anyway, Fred prevailed, and he could call it Barefoot, which anybody in their right mind would say, well, there's one's a Chevy, one's a Ford, one's a Bear. Fred had bears, so it made all the sense in the world. So anyway, I knew he had a good attorney there in St. Louis. So we got a really good attorney, become really good friends with. He's done a lot of, in fact, he did a lawsuit for me against General Motors and won. Real good guy, Frank Janowski, that I met, and longtime friend from St. Louis. Good trademark and patent attorney. And we went after him, and I called Bob and I got him on the phone. I said, Bob, I've got the paperwork, I've got the contract. I gave him a down payment. You want to make this easy? No. He sold it to me. Well, I guess Don Maples, you could say, was the real culprit because he sold something twice. And Chandler could always say to this day, which he probably does, well, I didn't know that he had already sold it to Seth, but he could have got out of the deal without getting lawyers involved. So anyway, that ended up being one of the most expensive trucks I ever had because of the attorney's fees and stuff. But we ended up getting it, and Robert ended up driving it, and we had a good run with it, and I sold it to those guys in Japan, and it was a good running truck. And like I said, it was different enough, and it had that tractor gear ratio, where it really sounded, like people could really hear it come into a building and stuff. It had those straight up zoomies on it, and it was just a different enough truck. It fit into our fleet pretty cool, but the tires were a hassle. They were so damn big and heavy. But yeah, that was an expensive proposition, and it's just kind of sad it went all to that. We flew back to St. Louis 3 or 4 times, but I got to, everything happens for a reason. I met a really good guy, this Frank Janowski, and through it all, and he's helped me with a lot of other things through the years. But it's been good. But that's the story on that. But
we have a question from Travis Doulton. He wants to know, why didn't you let Travis drive a truck?
Well, I think when we sold the trucks, he was 14. I'm not sure. We pretty much got out of it. Let's see. He was born in 82. We pretty much got out of it in 95. So 82, he was only 9 or something. Wait a second. 10, 82, 92. He was like 13 or 14, like I said at first. So he was a little too young to do it, but he would have made a good driver. I know that he wishes he was older then, because he would have, we probably would still be, in all fairness, if he was driving, we'd probably still be in the monster truck business right now. But he's got a lot of stunt stuff in him, and he's got a really successful business. He drives heavy equipment, and he's got a dump truck, and he's got his engineering contracting license, and so he's a real mechanic and equipment operator. He would have been great at it, and it's just too bad he was a little bit older. But we got out of it at the right time, and like I said, now most of the trucks are owned by Feld. They run their own trucks, and they probably don't pay too much to the other trucks, and it got real expensive going down the road.
Just interesting stories here. We got one more for your buddy Terry Woodcock here, and former podcast guest. He says, how many 5-ton axles did you guys carry on the road? I never saw anyone with so many axles. LOL.
Well, it depended how many trucks we had, but we used to go through them pretty good. I can't tell you how many twisted axles. Here's a funny story for you. Of course, this shows you how I'm fairly mechanical inclined. I can change my oil, and Jimmy's probably laughing right now. But, when it comes to the basics, I'm not too bad at. But, people ask me questions about the Chevy truck parts and stuff. Usually when it gets into the mechanical stuff, I revert to Jimmy. But we were at this LA Sports Arena, and there's a picture, I think, of the Crusher crushing there at the LA Sports Arena. You can see it's an indoor arena with blue walls. And it was the first place we ever took the Crusher. It had the 5 tons, and Jimmy put the chrome caps like you put on a diesel over the axles, which we soon very quickly got rid of those because we knew we'd be taking those wheels off so much. But so I think Steve Helm was driving. He did a donut, and one of the wheels fell off, broke the axle, and the ball bearings went zooming across the floor. And I went over and picked up one of those ball bearings, and talk about hot potato, son of a buck. That ball bearing was so damn hot. I dropped it like a hot potato. And but yeah, I think we usually carry about, and they were all hardened. We took them to Henry's Tough Axles, and they hardened them all. And then towards the end, Jimmy, I think, had brand new axles made, and somehow or another he figured out a way. That's what I say about Jimmy. He can figure shit out. You know, he might have to break quite a few things before he figures out how they don't break anymore. But he figured out some way, whether heating or cooling or stressing them or making them from some other kind of material, that everybody started buying 5-ton axles from us, because there was something about him, and I don't know what he did with them. Maybe he had the Pope throw some water on them or something. I don't know, but those suckers were good after that. But at first we were buying them in the cargo loads from Boyce up there in Salt Lake. Thank God for Boyce. He kept us in business the first 3 or 4 years we were in business. But yeah, I would say we always had 5 or 6 per truck we were hauling. And we'd always, you know, somebody else needed an axle, we'd give them an axle. You know, I mean, I think I don't know what they cost. What's an axle cost? $250, Terry, something like that. $200, $100. But, you know, so we always had a plenty to go around. But
Sounds great. It looks like
I just want to say that I still am, you know, just blown away by the way that people still like the trucks, and the fans that we have, and have kept me interested in, you know, like I said, doing the merchandise and you know, the nice things they say, like Tom Montgomery, you know, every year or so he tells me, boy, you don't know the feeling I got every year watching those trucks pull into the arena, you know, with the lights blinking on top and how clean they were, and it looked like right out of a car show or something. And, you know, like Jimmy and I just think to ourselves, well, that's kind of what we were doing. You know, we didn't go out to build something that would be, you know, that would stand the test of time like they have. So it's really honoring, and I'm humbled that if there is such a thing as a legacy or whatever, that the trucks are what made it. You know, those trucks, those pieces of iron, still to this day are in people's minds, and they want to know about them.
Well, my good buddy Travis Palm has a question for you. I mean, he seems like he asks this question every time. It's a pretty good one. He says, what is your advice getting into the monster truck scene?
Well, that's kind of tough nowadays. You probably got to ask Terry Woodcock. I think the trucks are probably getting paid about the same thing they were getting paid when we left, which is about $1,500 a performance. So unless you're hauling 2 trucks and doing multiple shows, performances, and you have trucks that don't break, and some kind of a sponsor, whether it's a local dealership that gives you a free oil change or something like that, I don't think it's going to make it, because there's not a lot of shows out there. I mean, there's still shows. I know a guy that, of course, this year with the fairs all shut down, they're kind of quiet, but there's a couple of, you know, John Borba's still doing some shows, and there's another couple of them. I don't know the names off the top of my head. I know the guy, there's an old rodeo announcer, Jeff, that he pimps some shows, and they all probably do 5 or 10 shows a year. There's a couple of guys that run out here on the West Coast, but they're all using the shock trucks, and you know, they run 3 or 4 trucks at a show, and you know, they do Turlock and Tulare and those shows in Bakersfield. But you know, I don't know if there's any money in it. And Terry could tell you. You know, Terry makes good money doing the movie stuff, and I think he kind of does it. The monster truck stuff is fun, but I think you got to have a sugar daddy or sugar mama to be successful. And you know, I just don't know. I don't think there's any sponsorships right now out there laying around like Goodyear or, you know, Pennzoil or any of those things that are wanting to do that, because you're not in front of the crowds. You know, the numbers that we used to give Skoll and AMPM of how many impressions we made a year is what they based on paying us the money they paid us. I mean, we used to get a check from U.S. Tobacco Company. There was a big check, and one time they used to send it by courier or whatever. You know, now I guess it's FedEx, and it'd be in an envelope, you know, and we'd get 3 of them a year, right? And they were pretty decent sized check. And I mean, most people could buy a house for them, okay? But I mean, we used them. It all cost money to operate the payroll. You know, keeping 5 trucks on the road 24 hours a day, 11 months a year. hotel rooms, fuel permits, flat tires. We carried spare tires because Goodyear gave us the spare tires. But one year they left it on our front porch, which at the ranch where we live, we never used the front door at our house. We always went in and out the back door. Well, it was there for about a week just sitting on the front porch. This check that somebody could have gotten, went and bought a Lamborghini with or something. It's kind of funny. But yeah, I don't think those kind of sponsors are out there anymore. And like I said, I don't see how you could show up the return on investment, that they used to get, So doing these little shows like Turlock, nothing the matter with them. Salinas, where they get 5,000 or 6,000 people a night, 2 nights, and then so all year long you're in front of 100,000 people. That doesn't really strike up a lot of interest in the kind of sponsorships. And now with social media, a lot of these people get so much free advertising, and they've just changed their whole where they're spending money advertising. It's like just sports in general. How long are these companies, AT&T and these energy companies, going to sponsor these big buildings with no sports events going on? Nobody going to the sports events in the buildings. How long are those big $30 million contracts going to last? It's going to trickle down to the players, the Lakers, the 49ers. Are they going to be able to pay a quarterback $30 million a year or whatever they pay him because they don't have Levi Strauss giving them money to name the stadium? I think there's going to be the next 2 years. I think even after the COVID thing's over, I think the whole shape of how motorsports was before COVID is going to be totally different. And I think the sponsors see it. And I think between now and it's going to be at least 12 months before anybody's sitting next to each other in a stadium, I believe. Because I do a lot of work with the state treasurer, and we have our thumb on the heartbeat of what's going on in California, what kind of events are going to be opening up, and rodeos being hit real hard. So there's a lot of these sponsors like Dodge, Ram is with rodeo, and they didn't activate any of their rodeo sponsorship this year. They went and spent the money on Yellowstone on TV. They went and spent the money on social media, and they find out, God, this is easy. We don't even need employees to do this. We just buy this stuff. Where with rodeo, they had all these trucks running around and people setting up displays. And it's sad to see that stuff go away. But what COVID has done is showed them there's other ways, just like the sponsors that sponsor these big stadiums and sponsor football games and sponsor, these big suites that are at all the sponsorships coming in these big arenas that they built, that they get billions of dollars for the suites, and those people can't go and get in their suites. So with all that said, that's kind of a long way to say, I think your energy might be spent in a different direction, and I don't know what that direction is, but I don't see a lot of, in the current climate and in the next couple of years, where there's going to be a big sponsor going to step up. But you never know. Sponsors are where you find them. Like I said, we ran into Roger Penske, and it didn't happen, but every sponsor I found, just about, we found not hustling them. And just about every sponsor I tried to hustle didn't happen. So it was all, I knew somebody, I met them. Meredith was with Lod Cook at this golf tournament. That's how things come together. So, I have this saying, I went somewhere to find a bull, to buy a bull, and I came home with a horse, and that's the only thing I can say is sometimes I go to places and I take my boss Fiona on these tours, and she goes, well, why are we going here to this such and so, or why are we meeting with this guy? So, well, you never know. And all of a sudden something comes out of that meeting that's really good. We find out something else is going on or whatever. So, my saying is always go somewhere. Somebody says, I got something for sale. I go look at it, go see what's going on, or have dinner with somebody and they talk about, it might be a video game that somebody's introducing, or some kind of social media or TikTok thing that they go, hey, we want to do a monster truck dance video, or, whatever. And you happen to be talking to somebody, you go, well, I could do a monster truck for that, but.
Yeah, very interesting stuff there, especially with kind of behind the scenes of how sponsorships work and stuff. Just kind of gearing away from that here, one of our last questions of the night, and it's about monster tanks. How come you never, from Tom Montgomery, did you ever have thoughts/plans to do tank monsters? What were your thoughts on the tanks?
Well, the tank I loved was Lauren Pryor's tank, and he was a puller out of Colorado. Like Mike Galloway says, Colorado. and it became the Bigfoot tank, whatever they called it, Bigfoot tracks or foot tracks or track foots or whatever. But that was a cool tank. That was a super fast, lightweight tank. But the reason I never used them and never built one and stayed away from was 90% of the arenas we went into were horse arenas. They were fairgrounds, horse show arenas, rodeo arenas. And so we had to take all the glass out of the cars. We had to clean all the cars of moldings. We couldn't leave one screw, nut, bolt, or anything in the arena after we left. We'd put tarp down, plywood down. We left the arena in better shape than we found it, which a lot of promoters don't do that. They leave and there's engines around, oil on the ground. And we didn't do that. We wanted to, leave a good, because I come from a rodeo background. I'm an ag guy. I want to keep it. A lot of people didn't believe it. We ran in, like at Pomona, at the fairgrounds at Pomona, we ran on the racetrack where $1 million racehorses were running because they knew we took care of the footing. And that was kind of a unique deal. We had to wait with the whole monster truck setup out on trucks. And the last horse race was like at 5, I think it ended about 5:45, the last horse race. They get all the horses off the track, open up the gates. We'd set up the whole monster truck arena and have a monster truck show at 7 o'clock at night. Bring in the cars, the announcer stand, bring up everything. So we were very versatile that way. And the tanks didn't fit into that. They just shred cars. But one thing that was funny about Mike Galloway, we were doing, and we used to do shows like we would do a 45-minute show, an hour show. Then they'd have a rodeo a half an hour after our show. So like the announcer stand, we'd pull a flatbed truck into the arena. Well, we'd have to pull that out of there because that was going to be where the bulls were going to be. Well, Mike Gallo was doing the send-off for all the monster trucks. This guy on the tractor starts pulling the announcer stand out of the arena. They hadn't unplugged the cords or anything. Mike's up there trying to announce it. It's the funniest thing that ever happened. I'll tell you. There's a lot of good stories we had like that, in doing the shows. But that was the main reason with the tanks. And Meredith will tell you, Mike will tell you, we'd be out, and Travis and Alexis, they were good because they were close to ground. We used to pick up glass in the arena and shovel glass because sometimes you couldn't get all the glass out. Sometimes somebody missed a window that was rolled down in the back of the car. There's no window crank. So we'd shovel glass at night after the monster truck show, and the drivers most of them would leave and go to the next show. And so Meredith would always complain about, oh, what are we doing shoveling glass? I say, hey, just pretend they're diamonds. They're little diamonds. Oh, that's a good idea. So that with the tanks would have made that a lot harder to clean up the arenas.
So as we slowly try to wind down here for the night, a lot has changed in the business from when you first started to where we're at now. Do you still follow the current happenings in the monster truck business, and do you miss being actively involved?
Well, like I said before, Jimmy and I and Meredith, for the most part, have moved on doing a lot of things. And of course, I see it on Facebook. You can't miss it. And I have a nice visit with Dennis Anderson every year. I really like him. He's like a real hardworking guy, and I think he got what he thought it was worth a lot of money in the beginning from Feld, but he really got kind of taken for a ride. It's kind of sad, but then he got a divorce, which kind of hurt him. But so we always visit about stuff, and but I really think I got out at the right time, and I can't see how my operation would fit into what's going on today, and I know Jimmy can't see it either. I mean, it's just doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think it's fine. I'm not a hater like a lot of people. About this stuff. They've come a long ways, the backflips and, the pop wheelies and stuff like that. And Jeff Boehner's been able to stay up with it, and he's still driving. And as far as I know, he is. Last time we talked, and he came down to our reunion too. He was one of our steady guys. He ran with us every year and always had really clean, nice equipment. And, but I just don't see how it would fit in this atmosphere. And especially with the fairs this year would have been terrible. There hasn't been one fair in California hardly, so it would have been really tough. But it was good. It was, it happened for a reason, and it was good. Good what had happened. I think it happened at a perfect time, and we came along and built some really quality trucks and had a lot of fun. And like I said, Mike Galloway has become one of my very closest friends, and he and his wife and his whole family, his daughters, and I visit them a couple of times a year. And they're, I've got a lot of friends, and the memories, I think, my dog's tail. It's time for there's past time for their dinner, so they're wondering what's going on. But anyway, that's the story. I just, it was like rodeo. I rodeoed for about 16 years. I enjoyed it, but I go back to it. No, I keep up with it. I go, sometimes I go to rodeos. I try to help them out, try to help them with sponsorships and stuff. And they've had a tough year too. And it was a part of my life, and I enjoyed it. And I'm back now in the pickup parts business. I kind of doing what I used to do at Golden State, while I'm just focusing on the rare parts, hard to find parts. I have about 1,000 things on eBay, and I'm making about 30 or 40 different hard to find parts that aren't in the industry. So I don't, like, if you're building a 57 Chevy, I don't have everything you need, but I probably have what other people don't have. So those kind of things I'm focused on. So I do that in my spare time. And then, like I said, I work for Fiona Ma, who's the state treasurer. And I started working with her for about 10 years ago. And I really enjoyed my time with her. And we have a lot of fun. And I've connected back with agriculture. And she's going to run for governor. So if you're in California, look for her on the ballot. In 26, she's going to run for governor. Of course, she's running for treasurer again in the next election. But really neat lady. And she gets it. And I think that's why I went to work for her, because when I started introducing her to ag people, and she's a problem solver. I say, hey, ag's got a problem with this, or, cars and this and that and carb. And she just likes to solve problems. And whether it's in her agency or not, she'll reach out to DMV or reach out to here and try to fix things that aren't right. And it's a real rarity these days. So I've enjoyed my time with her.
Well, Seth, you've told us a lot of great stories here tonight. We really have got a great timeline of your career in the business. Make this our last question. You've accomplished a lot of different things. You've been a part of a lot of cool moments, especially in the early part of the sport. Do you have a favorite memory that sticks out above some of the others?
Well, yeah, there's so many of them, and they all have different high points. But when I look through the pictures and the magazine articles and the stories and stuff, there's definitely some high points. And having my kids see how well respected Jimmy was and Meredith was as a driver and stuff like that was really really nice for me to see that. And I don't know, I just think going to Anaheim and doing well and seeing Meredith, I'm going to say she beat Bigfoot at Oakland one year when they called it close, and of course where that went. But and that was okay. We never went there to really, it wasn't like we needed a win to put in our belly, but it was just fun. And I think getting to know the Steve Helms and the Gary Sartons of the world, and it brought Jimmy and I real close together. And it just was it was like a family business. It was really a family business, and Steve Helm and those guys. And I think all those memories stuffed into one is just it was just a great time of my life. Probably one of the better times of my life when working with all those guys. And they all cared about the equipment. They cared about the show we put on. And Mike Galloway sold the show, and he was there every day and never said no. And I think I paid him for most of the shows he worked, if I remember right. But he's a great guy. And, we had a lot of fun. And a lot of the memories some of them I can't really talk about, because I'll talk to you one-on-one. But just the times that we were at these shows and we were working on the trucks, or we were setting up displays, and just funny things that happened, and becoming men or something. It was a great time to be doing it. I wouldn't want to be doing it right now. It was too hard to work when you think about it. But at the time we were young, our bodies were in good shape, and we had a lot of fun. And there wasn't. What's funny is a lot of people say, "Oh, I bet you guys partied a lot." When I rodeoed, we kind of partied a lot because, after the bull ride, or something, I'd get my makeup off, we'd go to the bar and look for friends and family or something. But, at the monster truck shows, I'm not saying we never had a beer, but for the most part, we were just busy. We were just tearing down the trucks, loading the trucks, cleaning the arena, selling T-shirts. We had fun. And I don't think we missed this party element, but there really wasn't that party element. The fans might have all gone to Josie's or Jocko's or somewhere for beer afterwards. I don't know, but it was like we were always there till we turned off the lights about 3 a.m.
Well, I'll tell you, Seth, every guest we've had on so far, either I've known personally or I've worked with in the business. This is the first time I've ever spoken to you and got to learn so much about you and really look up to you. And a lot of the things that you've accomplished is really the model on what we do in current monster trucks. It's from guys like you who did it first and made it work to pave the way for everyone else. So this has been really cool for me personally to learn a lot about you, and I'm sure Vinny kind of would agree with me.
Definitely going to agree with you on that one, Phil. I mean, I've learned so much about, the history of the, old era, I guess you could say. And it was really awesome talking to you, Seth. Kind of first time talking to you myself. I know Levi is about you. Levi, what do you have to say?
Man, well, what an honor. And first, I got to thank Vinny and Phil for reaching out to me to join the podcast for tonight. And I got to thank you, Seth, for just being pretty much a man full of, that's basically a walking book, just full of stories, just being a legend and all that. I know I'm kind of sucking up a little bit here, but it's truly awesome. And I also just hope that, some of us younger guys like me, Phil, and Vinny, that we just want you to know we appreciate the older style stuff you guys did back then. And it truly means a lot to have you guys help us start what we love, which is, of course, monster trucks.
Well, you use that legend word too freely because I'm not the legend. Jim Reese is the legend, and the trucks were really the legend. So, and I'm glad they reflect on us wanting, I put the money in them, of course, but, and I'm an open book. I mean, you can find my phone number on the emails or, email me. I think if you just Google me, you'll find my phone number or, Facebook, whatever. And Chris and I talk all the time, and Tom Montgomery and I talk all the time, but, I get probably, and I'm busy, and I don't mind them. I love it. I probably 10 texts or messages a week, says, hey, what about this? What happened there? And they, of course, know more than I do about some of the details, like, oh, how come the bumper was changed on the Boss that year and this and that, but I don't mind talking about it. I love talking about it. It's fine. And I enjoy it. And it kind of, when I hang up the phone or stop texting, it kind of amazes me that people still remember it and know as much about what Jimmy and I were doing at the time. We don't remember what we did last year, much less we were doing in 85 or 86, other than those high pointed things that, and the people that helped us. There was a lot of people that I didn't even mention on this, and I don't even know where to start. That helped all the trucks, or when they were broke down. Chuck Love, I mentioned him. He loves going, and there was Gary up who just died this last year. Good friend of ours that when we were up in anywhere around the Bay Area, his tow truck was there. He'd haul the cars for us. He'd wrench for us, and at night Terry Woodcock would help us when we had it was just a big. We had this following, and there was a Keith Badnell. It's a welder around Santa Maria. He would always go to the shows he could get to and help us weld stuff and fix trucks. And one more closing deal. So speaking of welding trucks, I was thinking about Paso Robles, and Jimmy will enjoy this. So there were these two world champion cowboys. One's a world champion, Gary LeFew, and this Bill Dunn was there. And so they wanted to drive the monster trucks. And Jimmy goes, no way, no way. They're going to tear it up. I said, no, we're going to do it. It's a good marketing thing. And it's a real rodeo town, Paso Robles, and the rodeo had just been there. And Gary LeFew was there and this Bill Dunn. So we got him in these two trucks, and they had a drag race. And I tell you, Jimmy was so pissed off at me. I don't think he got over that for about a month. They didn't tear the trucks up, though, but it was pretty good. But every once in a while, I'd get in trouble with Jim.
And I bet we only just scratched the surface here with the amazing stories and history lessons we've learned here tonight. I'm sure we're going to be having you back on again very soon.
I love it.
It's been a pleasure having you on, Seth. I can pass for Levi and Vinny, and especially all the people that are still watching right now. This has been a blast. We're definitely going to get you the link so you could share it out to everybody that wants to rewatch or didn't catch all of the moments here tonight. And just really appreciate you having you on here tonight.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth.
Appreciate it. You bet.
Well, that's the one and only Seth Doulton. He's a Monster Truck Hall of Famer. He tells it like it is. And, He's really one of the first guys that did a lot of the things, whether it was trial by error or great successes that led to so many others, including some of our previous guests, that have them become successful in the business. And I know he toots his horn saying that, he's not the legend. It's guys like Jim. That's just another testament to a guy like Seth who always, doesn't forget where he came from. He always remains humble, and he always appreciates what got him today.
I mean, if you can get Jim Reese on, that's another good episode idea.
Hey, you never know who might pop up next on the Monster Trucks Outlaws of the West podcast. I can't hear you there, John. Please unmute yourself. There you go.
Rookie mistake. Anyway, you talk about people popping on the podcast. Well, it's the end of the show. I mean, Phil, let's give a hint on who we got next.
I'm not good with hints.
Okay, I'll give a hint. Let's put it this way.
Okay.
This guy promoted shows for over 30 years. Very well known in the business. Levi, you got anything before we play the video?
I've been to some of his shows, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, the man is a hype man for sure. He knows how to get that crowd pumped and ready to rock for some monster trucks.
Well, you talk about being the hype man. I'll tell you what, this video is sure hype.
From the promoter that discovered a local Hollywood band, Motley Crue, and produced their first major concert. And who was instrumental in the marketing and promotion that helped turn drag racing funny car legend John Force into a professional. Over 30 years of promoting events. Currently promoting over 45 motorsport events a year. Owner of Racetrack Promotion, a full production and consulting company that produces the Monster Truck Night of Fire and Thrills Spectacular. Steve Quercio.
Well, they say 13 is a special number, whether you think it's lucky or unlucky. And that's what we have next week. It's episode 13, and it's going to be the very unique Steve Curcio. He's been in the business forever out here on the West Coast and all around the country. He has so many incredible stories from even before he got into the motorsport business, and he's actually running a show right now out in North Dakota. So he's still out there kicking it. And he's still making memories, and he's still proving his worth and making himself a known commodity in the business.
I think we have a question. I think we have one fan question we didn't answer. I don't know if we'd call him a fan. Well, he's a fan of Levi. It's from Doulton. You know who this is. I'll let you read it out. Levi, I'll let you read this one out.
All right, I'm going to be referring to myself in the third person, I guess. So this is from Joshua Yoho. I wonder who that is. My question is for me. Who is your favorite Monster Jam crew chief? Was that the PayPal notification for $100 that I saw while I was on the podcast? I'm just kidding. Yoho's a good dude. Yoho, talk to me sometime, man. You call me. You're asking if I'm your favorite, but you don't reach out.
Oh, man.
I think Yoho gave you that flag.
I believe he had another point, though. I believe he had another point that may redeem him from that question.
Oh.
Yeah, where's my Peter? The movement is still strong, folks.
If anyone doesn't know who that Peter is, that'd be Peter Nyman out in Sweden who drives Thor and Earthshaker for Monster Jam. He's a cool guy, too, but we don't know where he's at.
Where's my Peter? Who knows?
Hey, look, guys, It's been a great podcast. This has been the longest podcast we've done thus far. If you missed something in this episode, please rewatch it. Please share it to anybody who you think would be interested in watching this. Seth's been around for a long time, and he has a lifetime worth of stories, so I'm sure more people want to hear them. If you haven't seen some of our previous episodes, we have another long podcast with Terry Woodcock and a fairly long podcast with John Borba. And a lot of great podcasts with some of the rising stars here on the West Coast. Make sure you check that out in our video feed. And, of course, if you're on this page and you haven't liked this page on Facebook, I'm not quite sure what you're doing. So make sure you hit that like button and follow us on Instagram as well. We have an Instagram account running there if you're on Instagram. But if not, always follow us here on Facebook. We'll keep you guys up to date with all the happenings here on the Outlaws of the West podcast. It's been a great episode here tonight, and I know next week's going to just set the bar once again as we welcome Steve Curcio on, the lifelong promoter in the business.